More importantly, Bob, here in a couple days, he's going to have all those guys surrounding him as they hit those pave section, and you know, right there he could gain 2-3 minutes on some people that potentially have more trouble than he's having.
Thanks, Chris. You always bring such interesting information. Chris Carmichael will join us many times during the Tour de France. Meanwhile, Lance Armstrong and all the riders know what happened last year. They have to be wary in the stage 1 that's coming up. Inside OLN, executives are wondering exactly what Kirsten Gumm has been up to. They gave her an expense account and said, please tell us what the countryside is like. However, her reports have been dominated by beer. Hopefully that changes now as we check out her latest Expedia travelogue.
From white to brown to red, from bitter to smooth to sweet, the complex Belgian beers can easily knock you off your feet. Yes, the brew here is some of the most potent around.
While the English and Germans may boast about their beer drinking, no one comes even close to the Belgians. In this country, beer drinking is a national pastime.
Drink Belgian beer is the best in the world. It's a real beer.
Fresh. It's the best.
We like it. It's a really good creation of God.
And with more than 400 different beers to choose from, it could take you years to find that perfect pint.
Since there are no laws regulating how the beers are brewed, each creation can be as big and bold as its inventor's desire. The open platform can be credited to the monasteries and abbeys in this region, where monks began developing beautifully balanced Trappist beers centuries ago and selling them as a way to raise money. In just about every town, large or small, you can find a brewery pumping out its own distinctive and complex flavors. The Boat Brewery near Dinant, though small, produces 200,000 beers a day. The tasty recipes perfected through years of experience. In Belgium, the demand for quality beer is always at a premium.
Bonjour. And they sure are a thirsty bunch. Believe it or not, the typical Belgian drinks an average of 60 gallons of beer every year.
Want to check out your cycling adventure? Check out Expedia.com. Obviously, we have an issue here. The best beer comes from Belgium. I mean, it's good, but it's a good thing this Tour de France doesn't go through Germany anytime soon. When we come back, it's time to ask Bob, and why did stage 1 last year go so wrong? That's coming up next on the AOL for Broadband pre-race show. The Belgians cherish their independence because it's been challenged so often. Welcome back to OLN's coverage of the 2004 Tour de France here on OLN. Al Trowick along with Bob Roll. Bob, just so people have an idea, could you reenact what you did during the commercial break? Just a little bit of it so people have an idea. Right into that camera right there.
I don't think the people are ready for that quite yet. Maybe after a couple more weeks.
Now, we have thought about a segment that's Don't Ask Bob, but for now it's Ask Bob. You go to AOL.com, keyword Tour de France, and we're trying to interact with people. So far, would you say you've been challenged by questions like this one from Betsy that we're about to have? Because she wants to know, should U.S. Postal Service try to control the tempo from the start of the Tour de France?
That's a very good question. What I've noticed lately is the difference in questions people have asked regarding the Tour from the United States, much more sophisticated, and that's a very good point that Betsy brings up there. We have a 3-week race. Is it a good idea for any one team to try to control the event from start to finish? It is absolutely not a good idea. You have to be attentive, but not at the front. And that's why it's so critical that Lance gets second in the prologue and not have the yellow jersey, and a very strong team like Fassa Bortolo to be controlling that. So they can take a little bit of a backseat, conserve their strength for a very long bike race, and it's the ideal situation. Fassa Bortolo, very capable. They're used to controlling the tempo, leading out Alessandro Patacchi for all the sprint wins. And Lance Armstrong's riders know that they just group around Lance, keep them out of the danger. There's going to be a lot of crosswinds. We might even get some rain later in the day. And for that reason, you have to stay in the front, not at the front, for a very long time, 3 weeks of racing. It's a great situation for Postal to be in, and a very good question. Thank you very much.
lot of our cycling fans are ready to get going. A prologue is one thing, but this is about stage racing like we're about to see today. So you have energy, you have nerves, a lot like last year, I guess, and that's what led to the big problems. Tyler Hamilton's broken collarbone, Levi Leipheimer going out before his Tour de France ever got started. Is that pretty much what you think led to what we're seeing here in the carnage on the first stage?
Most certainly. This is a Kelme rider, Jose Enrique Gutierrez, that caused that. You can see on the far right hand of your screen. Loses his pedal, comes down back towards the middle of the group, and from there it is just dominoes. Everybody going down like bowling pins. An absolute disaster with 500 meters to go in stage one. Levi Leipheimer most certainly out of the Tour on the very first day out on the open roads last year. So when they see that, the riders know from year to year they have to stay in the front. So you have all 188 guys going for each and every corner in the very last kilometers of the race. And if anything happens to anybody, that's what you see, this big implosions of riders, everybody going down en masse. Even Lance Armstrong, as attentive as he is, went down in that crash as well. So you never can predict.
Now, before the prologue, Tyler Hamilton went out to check out some of the Belgian blocks. That's a Belgian tradition on the streets, and it's also something that the cyclists think of in terms of the streets of Belgium being so different than the French roads that they'll see in the Tour de France. What's the big difference, and how does it play into today's stage?
Well, in French roads, they have a lot of roundabouts, and so when the peloton comes in there, they try to make the most fair way for the whole peloton to get through. It's easy to get around there. Generally speaking, when they first came in, it created havoc in the peloton, but now the riders are used to that. In Belgium, what they do to control traffic is they put blocks every 50 meters or so on either side. So it's more of a weaving through in this serpentine way. So if you haven't ridden here a lot and you're not used to that, and you only have 2 days to find out what it's like, it might be too late. Of course, they have hay bales and barriers so the riders don't get hurt, but it is a very different and in that way, much more dangerous situation.
Don't want to hit those hay bales. Now, what plays out today? Is there any movement from T-Mobile and Jan Ullrich as a regard to a response from the prologue? Does Lance and U.S. Postal do anything, or is this somebody else's game?
I think that this is a sprinter's game today. Fassa Bortolo's want to control the tempo for two reasons. Give Pataki a chance to win the sprint and keep the jersey on the shoulders of the leader, Fabian Cancellara. I don't see a real offensive being put in by any other team. If there were some crosswinds that started to blow and there was a chance to get some time, U.S. Postal would probably take advantage of that more than anybody else. They're so ready for this bike race.
Certainly looked like it yesterday. We're just getting set for stage one, and before we have that coverage on OLN, we have to hear from Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwen, and we'll do that after this break on the AOL for Broadband pre-race show. Straight ahead today on OLN, just about 120 miles from Liège to Charleroi over some of the most historic cycling roads in Belgium. Welcome back to our mobile studios, making the move from Liège to Charleroi. Al Troutwig along with Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwen, who can do something I can't do. I really struggle to sit down with the coffee. I mean, that part I get. But I don't get the sitting down with the Süddeutsche Zeitung and the Dutch papers and all these papers that chronicle everything, every step that every cyclist made yesterday. Why don't you summarize what the buzz was after what Lance did yesterday?
Well, it's true. You've got to keep up with what the guys write about anyway, because this is such a vast organisation. There are 5,000 people on the tour. There's 1,000 media. We want to know all of the stories about all of the riders. The prologue yesterday, I think, was one of the best we've had for many, many years. And it wasn't just because Lance Armstrong finished second. Let's remember, too, 2 seconds behind the winner. Last time he did that, he went on to win the Tour by 6 minutes. A good omen for him. But I feel that we've seen a new guy arrive on the block in Cancellara. We've seen Lance gain time, 17 seconds over Ullrich, 18 seconds over Tyler Hamilton. And, of course, the sad day for the Australians, a record entry by the Australians. 10 riders, 1 falls off, 1 flops, and 1 doesn't even start because he crashed before the start.
Now, Paul, you've got a little bit of that tour guide look going today. And I think that would be a perfect look for you to take us through stage one and what lies ahead for everybody. We remember what happened last year in the crash. What about this one from Liège to Charleroi?
Should be a little bit different. Safari Guide will take you through the route this afternoon here, because I tell you what, it is going to be a safari around the Ardennes and moving away to the finish in Charleroi. As you said, 120 miles. The first part of the course is very difficult. It's resemblant of the Flèche Wallonne. But hopefully when we get down to the end, the sprinters will have their day, because I'm absolutely certain we will see a sprint royale with men like Alessandro Pataki getting to the front of the main field. But, you know, I really do like to see some of the old boys having a challenge. I'm looking today to see if Mario Cipollini still got it. And, of course, Eric Zabel. And, Phil,
he's younger than you.
Here,
he's younger than you.
They're all younger than us.
Now, when you look back at last year and you see the crash, was it bad enough to make everybody wary enough to prevent it from happening in consecutive years?
No, it won't. These guys, the first day on the open road, they are so nervous. It's so important for the sprinters to get the first win. The risks out there are absolutely unbelievable. There are hands, elbows, arms moving, flying all through the main field. It will be scary, which is why, as a man who wants to win the Tour de France, you've got to stay at the front, haven't you?
Hey, speaking of that, Phil, Jan Ullrich, he had a totally different energy level to me yesterday in the prologue. How did they handle him in the media as far as his result 15 seconds back?
I think they saw a typical ride by Jan, but you know, he always looks strong, and as Paul remarked when we were driving home last night, he sits on that bike and pumps such a heavy gear, that big gear. He never seems to be going quickly, yet he comes in with great times. He is a strong rider. But I was wondering about him, you know, I noticed on his lip he's got a little cold sore here. That's usually a bad sign. It usually means the body's not quite clicking into first gear. So we'll keep an eye on him, and I'm sure Lance will as well.
And you described him as sort of a locomotive difference between Lance and Jan to me.
Yeah, I think the big difference is he's very much like a diesel engine. Once he gets up to high speed, he can stay at that high speed for a very long time. Armstrong, on the other hand, is very responsive, very quick to accelerate out of the corners, and I think that's the big advantage.
All right, Paul Sherwen and Phil Liggett will be in the booth calling this one, 120 miles in Stage 1. It's likely that we won't be mentioning the names Ullrich and Armstrong very much at all during this Stage 1 from Liège, Belgium to Charleroi, Belgium, where Napoleon spent his last night before Waterloo, and we all know what happened there. Go to olntv.com, the official English website for the Tour de France. Stay tuned for the Tour.
You're watching a special presentation of the Outdoor Life Network.
Massive crowds filled the streets in Liège, Belgium yesterday for the 91st edition of the Tour de France. Pastor Bortolo's Fabien Cancellara took an emotional win on the 6.1-kilometre opening prologue. He was 2 seconds ahead of the 5-time defending Tour champ Lance Armstrong. The 23-year-old national time trial champion of Switzerland set a blistering pace, which enabled him to don the first yellow jersey of this year's race. Lance Armstrong put in a great ride, wasting no time in distancing himself from his rivals. He gained an impressive 15 seconds on Jan Ullrich. Today the race sweeps into the countryside of Belgium, and the speedsters of the peloton will come out to play. Stage 1 of the 2004 Tour de France is next on OLN. Yesterday, Liège played perfect host to a prologue in the Tour de France. Today, it's onward now. We stay in Belgium as we go to Charleroi, 126 miles, and the way the riders go, a little bit closer when you go by car. Hi again, everybody. Welcome back. It was a great day yesterday. I'm Phil Liggett, joined by Paul Sherwen. Paul, that was a wonderful prologue.
It certainly was. I don't think we expected Lance Armstrong to be quite as good as he was, but let's go back to 1999 when he came back from that cancer scare. And since then, Armstrong has had an incredible relationship with the prologue time trial. And since then, he went on to 2000 to actually get beaten in the individual time trial there. A little bit longer than the prologue, but he was second, 2 seconds in arrears.
Remember that 2 seconds? That's what he lost by yesterday. In 2000, of course, he went on to win that Tour by 6 minutes and 2 seconds. But yesterday, Armstrong was superb. He surprised everybody. He was just beaten by Fabien Cancellara by 2 seconds. There's the current race situation as we start off today. Armstrong in second place, Jose Enrique Gutierrez third. Brad McGee, the winner last year, only fourth this time. A little bit further down the overall. Long-time leader Oscar Pereiro hung on to finish in sixth place. Two Americans who had a great ride, Bobby Julich and George Hincapie. They made the top 10. Looking at the big notable riders, Levi Leipheimer conceded 15, Iban Mayo conceded 21, and Roberto Heras conceded 37 seconds. Should be a day for the sprinters today, should be a day for Alexandro Pataki.
Well, he's the king of the sprints. You know, he had a fantastic season last year with 30 stage victories around the globe. This year, he's already done very well with 9 stage wins at the Giro d'Italia. That is a post-war record, and he's already looking to try and set his stakes here at the Tour de France.
And Mario Cipollini will be joining live action very, very shortly. I can tell you Cipollini's already crashed in the Tour de France, but he's okay, and he could well be in at the kill today at the stage finish. There he is, 4 stage wins, the last time he took part in the Tour de France way back in 1999. Remember, the sprinters have their own competition. It's a green jersey competition. First came into the Tour de France in 1953. They score their points for that jersey out at the intermediate sprints. We should see all of those. And then by scoring sprint at the finish places, with the winner taking 35 points today.
Well, the AMD map is certainly not one for the people with worries about the mountains in the first part of the course, because the first part of the course here this afternoon from Liège to Charleroi reflects a little race in the area called the Flèche Wallonne. The sprinters will not enjoy the first 100 kilometres, but they will enjoy the run down to the finish line of this 202-kilometre stage, because fortunately it does flatten out just a little bit. And let's not forget, the race 125 miles, and that's approximately the distance from Los Angeles to San Diego. The men who've won here in the past, the last man to come here and win in 1995 was a certain Eric Zabel, and that victory just happened to be on his birthday.
Thank you very much, Paul. And there's a little glance of Cipollini. As I said, he has crashed, but he does seem to be okay as far as injuries. As you can see now, the rain has started. Happy to tell you at the finishing line, it's not quite so heavy as it is out on the course. But Cipollini, I think, Paul, it's a 4-kilometre climb on here, the Côte de Bourlon, at around 102 kilometres covered. And Cipollini looks as though he is in more than a spot of bother right now.
This is the hardest climb on the course. The riders have already been over 3 little climbs in the early part of the stage this afternoon, and I think the acceleration here, as they're trying to pull that leading group of 5 back into the fold, has put Mario Cipollini into a spot of bother. He shouldn't have too much difficulty. It wasn't really a big crash that he was involved in the early part of the race, and I would expect him to come back into the main field once they go over the summit.
Now, we will see pictures very shortly. Already over the summit is a leading group of 5 riders, and there is the gap for you, 2 minutes and 10 seconds. We haven't got the result of the climb yet. We didn't see the riders go over. I can tell you it's a battle for the first leadership of the King of the Mountains between Tombak and Paolo Bettini. Yannick Tombak, the Cofidis rider, by the way, and here we are with them now. Tombak is in fact in the Cofidis squad, first-time rider. There he is on the far side. There's, oh, this is the rear of the group, beg your pardon. This is Cipollini's group. Got a chance of getting back there, Paul. As you said on the map profile there, we're getting into flatter roads as we approach Charleroi.
Yes, certainly, as we rejoin the leaders here, this was on the descent, and it happened just a few moments ago. You can see Jens Voigt not being able to get around the corner. He actually decided the better part of valor there was just to go in a straight line, and he could see he had the exit. A man who certainly was in a very good situation, controlling what could have been rather a dangerous moment for him.
Well, I think the best thing there is to ask that man to move his car, because if the peloton come down to that same bend, there could be a lot more problems in a couple of minutes' time. So we're looking at the 5 leading riders now, just over 2 minutes. We've only just started our coverage. A long way to go today, 100 kilometres of racing still left to come on today's stage of the Tour de France. So you stay right with us here on OLN. Welcome back. We're looking here at Phonak bringing back 1 rider, and it might well be Tyler Hamilton, because they've got the racing numbers covered up at the moment. And there is Tyler Hamilton. I think Tyler was a victim of a crash, and the team has been recalled. Yes, it looks like Tyler, who was involved in a fall. He's okay, but wisely enough, the team has sent back the troops, and he's back in the peloton. And that descent did catch 1 or 2 riders out, by the way. Another faller there was Dmitry Fofanov of Kazakhstan. Looking there at the US Postal rider, that is Benjamin Noval, who is the first-time rider for the US Postal. He's the new Spanish member of the squad. He's only a young guy, a lot of pressure on his toe at the moment. So let's, as the race continues, why do they do it? Well, it's the desire to do what no man has ever done. Whatever the reason, we can't look away. From big wave surfers to rapid risking kayakers to climbers with no fear of gravity. We'll count down the 10 baddest boys in the outdoor adventure world. Outside Magazine's Ultimate Top 10, all new today at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, right here on OLN. Well, already, Paul, we are off to a very rocky start on this first road race stage. We did mention it yesterday. They seem to fall off more often on the opening days of the Tour de France than any other major competition, but they're nervous, and the worst thing they wanted today was rain.
Everybody's nervous on the first day, the sprinters more than most, because they want the chance of getting themselves out onto the open road and the chance of getting themselves a victory. A little bit of disorganization in this leading group of 5 now. That's, I think, because of the fact that Jens Voigt went off the road a few moments ago. Bettini looking over there to the young man who rides for Brioche La Boulangère, that's Franck Régnier, trying to encourage the riders to start working again together as a group, because that's their only chance to survive against the onslaught of the peloton over the last 100 kilometers.
Well, we still no absolute news on Mario Cipollini, but we think he is still behind the field right now. Now, knowing how Mario rides, he won't waste his energy. He'll wait to race another day for first place. There's the man with the board showing the leaders 2 minutes and 10 seconds. So a little bit of disruption on the climb of the Côte de Bourton has caused a slight recapture of the leaders. Little Paolo Bettini there in the blue colours of Quick Step. He's the most experienced in this breakaway, along with Jens Voigt. And they know what they're gambling on here right now.
Well, Mario Cipollini, Phil, actually really does need to get himself back into the main field, because with around about 100 kilometers to go to the finish, he stands a very serious chance of getting eliminated on the first day. Let's not forget there's an elimination time on every individual stage of the Tour de France. It's based on a percentage of the winner's time at the end of the day. And if you don't finish inside of that time, well, then you have to take the fast train home.
Yes, it's a cruel race, but then that's why it is such a brilliant competition. Jens Voigt in this breakaway, he has worn the King of the Mountains jersey back in 1998. I guess his highlight came in 2001 when for a day he wore the yellow jersey, and he's also won a stage. So he's done everything, and there's the climb they've just gone over, the Côte de Oquière, and Voigt has taken the points there. It's going to be tight for which one will wear the first leader's King of the Mountains jersey tomorrow.
Certainly will. The riders keeping very much together here, Phil, for warmth, I think, on this first day out on the open road, and they certainly will not enjoy this race, which is always a very nervous day once the race goes out onto the open roads for the first time. We're looking here at Mario Cipollini, and if the camera will tilt forward, we'll get a chance to see just exactly where he is on the road. He's got teammates alongside him. His team are completely dedicated to making sure that he stays in contact with the race. And as you can see, there is a gap between Mario Cipollini and the rest of the field. In fact, it's rather strange to see the Aussie national champion there, Matty Wilson, as well.
That's right, and Nick Gates, the other Australian who helps out Robbie McEwen, is also there split off. Maybe they'll come back. The gap now, though, down for 2 minutes. Another crash, that's Eisel. That looks to me like Bernard Eisel in the leading group has gone down. So let's see if they show us here exactly how it happens. Eisel is talking, not paying attention, has hit the back wheel of the Cofidis rider Régnier, and that is the sort of fall you don't want. Look at his bike bounce as he lands safely on the roadside. I think he'll be okay from that.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, Phil, that makes me think that the use of radios is a major advantage, and it's a major advantage for the safety, because theoretically his team manager would have been able to talk to him on the radio at this point, and he should have been thinking about doing that rather than coming up alongside, especially in these weather conditions. He's up and running again, but that certainly would have shocked him just a little bit, as he now is managing to try and get himself back into contact with that leading group of 4.
Well, I have to say that Eisel, let's have a look at that again, because here we go. You see, not paying attention, rips his foot out, bounces, fortunately misses all the riders. He'll have a bit of a sore bum tomorrow as he hits the road there and rolls onto the grass. All his bottles, all his food, everything out of his pocket, and I would think he'll be a little bit embarrassed about that. 2 minutes the gap as it all happened, as you can see. There he is, chasing back. Anyway, let's have a look at some of the technology used in the Tour, in Infinity's Technology of the Tour, and we're with Frankie Andreu.
These first stages are probably the most exciting in the Tour de France. It's for the sprinters. And to be a good sprinter, you have superior bike handling ability. You always have to avoid the crashes. They're always pushing on each other. You have to stay out of trouble. But it takes more than just good bike handling ability to be able to win. You have to have a lot of speed and a lot of power. It's been reported Pataki and Cipollini put out about 1,800 watts in their sprint. But the largest rider in this year's Tour de France is Magnus Backstedt, 212 pounds, and puts out a reported over 2,000 watts going to the line in the final sprint. These guys will be riding big front chain rings, 54, 55 with an 11 in the rear. It's an enormous gear and it takes a lot of power. Magnus is the king on the flat roads. He won Paris-Roubaix. He'll be up there for the sprints, but as such a large rider, he's going to suffer like a pig when he gets to the mountains.
And And that was the infinity moment. Thanks, Frankie. I tell you what, Bernard Eisel should have listened to your tips there on bike handling, because he made a mistake, and now he's having to race back up to those leaders. So 94 kilometres still left to ride. The gap is now about 2 minutes. The peloton getting knocked around a bit today, Paul.
Very nervous, and even more compounded by the fact that this weather is really not the best weather for the opening day out onto the open road. And these riders are always nervous on the first day, and these roads here in Belgium are very tricky and very technical indeed. What we're doing here is looking down the road to see the position of Mario Cipollini, and he might be in that group there.
Yes, as we look down there, I'm pretty sure that was a glimpse of the Cipollini group. I think they might get back, but they'll have to concentrate. The gap is coming down to 1:45 now, as we've got these 5 leaders still clear. Well, we'll take a break. When we come back, rest assured they'll still be in the lead. This man, though, will be a little bit more pained. We'll take our break. See you in a moment. Welcome back as the Tour de France goes on, and of course the riders now having a journey through the rain at the moment too, which is a great shame, but it's causing 1 or 2 problems for the riders just now. We're looking at the breakaway, which is still clear, but the gap is coming down. The good news is that Cipollini is getting back into the field. And the rain's still on. There's the difference now, 88 kilometres to go. That's 55 miles still to race to the finish. Only showing 4 names on there at the moment, so we'll see. Ah, there it is. So that's completing the 5. Bernard Eisel, the man who's got now an elbow which is rather badly cut. Okay, well, here's something for you now. Today's word of the day is Lance. Log on to olntv.com to find out more and enter for a chance to win an amazing cycling trip through France in OLN's Tour de France sweepstakes. Word of the day, Lance. Well, they're trying to shake up this race now as they all continue. Bernard Eisel here now. You can see the blood on his elbow. Nasty graze. They've got plenty of those as souvenirs if you've been a professional cyclist for any length of time. But I think for the man who's riding his first Tour de France, a little bit embarrassing to fall like that. You should always be paying attention with the proximity of the riders around you. Loosening off his neck as well. The gap continues to come down, 75 seconds. In fact, it's falling quite quickly, Paul.
It's coming very rapidly down, and that is all because of the tempo set on the front end of the main field by that team Fassa Bortolo. And you can see Bernard Eisel there looking just a little bit twitchy. I think when you have an accident like that, it tends to affect the nerves over the next few kilometers. But look at the time gap. The main field now is already in the zone where they just went through that hotspot sprint classification. Looking down the road, I would estimate we have got about 25 or 30 seconds to the group of Mario Cipollini, and Cipollini has got to hope that the main field catches the breakaways, slows down a fraction, and then he can reintegrate the main peloton.
Well, there is the group, and they're getting back, but they're having to work very hard. I think they will get back. There's the result of our first time bonus sprint of the Tour. 6 points for the green jersey, also 6 seconds for the yellow jersey on time. Eisel, Voigt and Tombach. All's well for Voigt, Paul, because he's the best man in the break. He was 11 seconds behind overnight. He's just been given 4 better than that now with a 4-second time bonus.
And even Eisel as well was only 24 seconds down at the start of the day, but I don't think they're going to survive to the finish line. What I've noticed, though, as we look at the front end of the main field, although the bulk of the work is being done by Fassa Bortolo, obviously for the leader, let's not forget Fabian Cancellara, but also for their sprinter Alessandro Patacchi. But there's a man in a black racing jersey on the right-hand side there, by the way, if you'll notice. That's Floyd Landis, and not very far away from him is Lance Armstrong, who's been riding very close to the front. Armstrong on the left-hand side, clad almost anonymously there in a black racing cape to keep himself warm and protect himself from the elements.
And this is the man who was in yellow 1 year ago on this day as we started off to the open road on the Centennial Tour de France, Bradley McGee. And he does seem to be in difficulty. He should not have been off the back of the climb unless he was himself delayed by a crash. Cipollini, we know, hasn't enjoyed the race so far. There he is, champion of Australia there, Matty Wilson as well. They're all relying on the boys from Domina Vacanzi here to take them back to the peloton. It's true, Paul, you can chase and close a minute gap but those last yards are desperate, aren't they?
They're horrendous. You can almost reach out with your hand and touch the front of the main field, but you cannot close that last 10, 15, 20 meter gap. And that's what these riders are going through at the moment. They can see the tail of the cars in front of them, but they're just not able to close down that last few meters. But I have to tell you, I wonder about the presence of that big sprinter there, Bradley McGee.
So we're looking here at the 5 leaders, and they continue, and a good sprint win there for Eisel despite his injuries at the first bonus sprint of the day. Anyway, let's take a look now at who's in the yellow jersey today in our Nike yellow jersey moment. And what a wonderful day it was yesterday for Fabian Cancellara. First ever day in the Tour de France, a massive crowd watching him. He's from Switzerland. Last time a Swiss rider won the prologue, it was Alex Zülle in the mid-90s. This man, he's a big boy for 23 years of age. He's an emotional boy. He was in tears when he saw Lance Armstrong finish. He knew. It took a while to sink in, but he knew he had become the first leader of the 101st year of the Tour de France. So there we are. Now, looking at a terrific amount of work being done here now by Fassa Bortolo. And oddly enough, it's not for the yellow jersey man, Fabian Cancellara. It's to try and bring Alessandro Petacchi back into the thick of the action for the big sprints.
Also hearing, Phil, there's been another crash at the back end of the main field. It's coming over race radio, and in fact 1 or 2 riders involved in that crash were from the Alessio team. It's very difficult out on the open roads. These guys here in the chasing group with Mario Cipollini and Bradley McGee are scampering down this descent, taking big risks going around the corner, hoping just to pull back a few seconds and catch up with the big main field.
Well, it looks like a lot of riders are now split up here on this rather slick road as Kim Kirken, the champion of Luxembourg, leads the charge to try and shut it down. It's down to 40 seconds now. Kirken, I'm surprised, but it's another man riding his first Tour de France. In all, we've got just over 30 riders, 37 to be precise, riding the Tour de France for the first time. So, as Kirken continues to set the pace, these are the quarry. They're coming down. It's inside 40 seconds now. It won't be long before we're all together again. Rejoin us after the break. And welcome back as we look at the Tour de France, and the pressure is really on now. This is the chasing rear group containing Mario Cipollini, Bradley McGee. But from what we can work out, and we've not got any confirmation, there appears to have been a crash in the peloton. We didn't see it, but the yellow jersey and a group of riders are speeding away from the main field at the moment. They are 30 seconds behind the Cipollini group. They're unfortunate because just when they were almost on, the crash has happened in the peloton. We had no pictures of it, and we're now facing a big chase of the whole field in the Tour de France. The leaders, by the way, are still out in front. So while we watched the rain here, it was dry at the start today, and Lance Armstrong was in good humour as he was talking with Craig Hummer.
Well, Lance, throughout your career, you've always let your riding do your talking. Yesterday, I think most of the world saw you make a statement. Did you accomplish what you set out to do?
It was a good start. It was what we talked about doing for me individually, but also as a team. I mean, we wanted the whole team to ride good, and we showed that. We won the team classification yesterday, and the most important thing for me was not so much the difference to the main rivals, but just how I felt and how motivated I felt during the warm-up, on the start ramp, going down the ramp, you know, in the race, coming out of the corner. I mean, it just seemed to be attacking the race and felt really good.
Talk a little bit about, after this, 11th month build-up, all the expectation, everything that's gone into preparing for this. How good did it feel just to be out on the course and back doing this race again?
It's always a relief to finally start, because here at the Tour you have days of waiting around, and it's a little bit of a circus 3 or 4 days before, and then finally you start, and it's just such a relief.
Last question, you guys, I mean, the cheers that went up for you when you got up on the starting area, do you feel that, or do you just zone out and get in your mindset?
Yeah, no, I mean, the people have been fantastic, and I've had a long history with Europeans and the French with regards to this race, and finally they're really, really supportive, and I appreciate it, and I hope that I can do something in 3 weeks and it's never been done, and I hope they appreciate that too.
All right, thanks for your time.
So we're looking at the field here now, who are fighting. Thanks very much, Craig, there. That was nice to hear from Lance, but right now he may be in trouble here. We're looking to see what is going on. I think the field is going to come back together. We've had one aerial view, and there is a big split, but it's interesting to see the yellow jersey of Fabian Cancellara, because he was riding with his team at the front. He has made the right half of the split. There you can see it. I'm certain that Iban Mayo has missed it. He's in that second group. It's not a big spread. But no cameras can get there yet, because the reason being the referees are keeping everybody away from what might be a crucial part of today's stage. And so we can't establish who is in the second group, and Race Radio is unable to give us any updated information. Well, I don't think it'll matter now, because it looks as though they are bringing it all back together. Chase 1 is at 30 seconds, but I think the peloton at 40 have just wiped out a 10-second deficit. Everybody can breathe again here, but judging by the fact that it's Euskadel Euskadi leading the charge up to the tail of that group, an absolute indication that Mayo was possibly the man caught out there, as they now reform, and so we can get ourselves back into a little bit of sensible attack. Big peloton together. Well, I think we can all breathe a sigh of relief now, Paul. It looks as though the peloton has just rejoined.
Yeah, it was a long, hard chase there, but it just again goes to make you never forget that to win the Tour de France, you have to be very alert on every individual stage. People might think, well, the first 10 days are not really important for a man who wants to win the bike race overall. But at any time, you can get involved in a bad split and lose yourself 25 or 30 seconds on the run in towards the finish line. This man has been riding at the front since the start, 23 years of age. Fabian Cancellara won the prologue time trial yesterday by 2 seconds ahead of Lance Armstrong. But I think in the latter part of this race, he'll be called upon to do some work for his team leader, Alessandro Petacchi, because basically that is what this team Fassa Bortolo is here at the Tour de France for. Their big sprinter, Petacchi.
That's absolutely for sure. Well, they're back together, and I'm pretty certain, Paul, that Armstrong was in the right half of that split because he was riding there. They're wearing black tops at the moment because of the rain, and we can't see anybody's numbers. It's a commentator's nightmare.
He was definitely there. I saw Floyd Landis, I saw George Hincapie and Lance Armstrong very close to the front. You can see the black jerseys there of US Postal Service, just trying to keep themselves nice and warm here this afternoon. Let's not forget, the important thing about a race like this is just making sure that the efforts are only used on moments when you want to pay. This is Cipollini's group, still at the back end of the bike race, but I think with the confusion of those crashes, they might just catch it up.
Well, there may be a little relaxation now, because we are hearing that, in fact, they are only 15 seconds now behind the 5 leaders. That's Jens Voigt, Yannick Tombach of Cofidis, Paolo Bettini Quickstep, Frank Renier of Brioche La Boulanger, and Bernard Eisel of FDJ. So it looks like we are going to be treated to a mass sprint for the next time bonus, which is not too far away now in Wannsee.
Well, in fact, you can just see them picking their way through the cars. I don't think it'll be very long before Mario Cipollini, Brad McGee and Matt Wilson, the Australian national champion, make the junction. This front end of the main field has not yet caught the leading group of 5, but I'm fairly certain now they have them in their sights, and it's only a matter of time before we have a complete peloton once again.
Yes, they're now saying 12 seconds. These are the Fassa Bortolo riders working for 2 leaders right now. Cancellara, the yellow jersey, and Petacchi they want to take out the stage with. They're going to make the best of these early days. These are big days for this team from Italy. Here's the breakaway. They've been away since around about the 12th kilometre. Voigt has been away from about the 7th. As they get to 500 metres, now can they hang on? It could be significant, you know, because Voigt could still be the next yellow jersey, or it could even be Eisel if they can just sneak the 6 seconds time bonus before the peloton catches up. And these roads are very greasy. It might deter the chase. Meanwhile, life at the back of the field. They are just getting onto the tail of the cars.
Well, Cipollini's done it, really. He's going to breathe a sigh of relief right now as he sees the back end of the main field just in front of him. It's been a long, hard chase. In fact, he was dropped on the Côte de Bourlon at 100 kilometres, and in fact, it's taken him 30 kilometres to catch back up to the main field. So it indicates his form is not the best it has been over the last few years, but at least his courage is there, and he wants to rival the top sprinters over the next few days. Cipollini back into the main field.
So the field swing under the bridge. Meanwhile, at the front, are we in time for the sprint? Yes, we are. And it looks as though Voigt is going to try here and have a dig, and that's Renier as well. That's Voigt in second place. Oh, he's taking on Bettini this time. Jens could do with winning the small bonus here. He's waiting as long as he can. There should be a banner on the road there, but also got the Renier, Brioche La Boulanger. We've got to watch these corners. It'd be silly to take chances. They're saying it's only 10 seconds the gap, so the field must be right on the back wheel here.
It's not much at all. And now if Jens Voigt can get himself maximum points, maximum bonus seconds here, he'll move up to second place in the overall classification. He started the day 11 seconds in arrears. He's already won himself 4 seconds out on the road this afternoon. If he crosses the line in first place, that will be an extra 6.
6th Tour de France for Jens Voigt, who's leading at the moment. First rode in 1998. He won the King of the Mountains jersey for a day, and he crashed spectacularly while wearing that jersey the next day coming down a mountain. Obviously good at going up but not coming down. Wow, he looked over to his right shoulder there, and that motorcyclist almost clipped him. And we're not absolutely sure where the line is here right now, but he might have misjudged it. He sat up anyway. There in the distance,
that's the main field.
It is the
big
main
long
field.
line
There they
of the
are,
main
all
field.
over to the right of the road as we look, and they've spotted them now because sitting up at the back of the race there, I think, was Paolo Bettini. He's going to wait. So we must have gone through the sprint. I must say I didn't recognise it, or maybe our cameras missed it, but we'll see. Or are we going again here now with Jens Voigt? We've gone through the sprint, so we'll have to wait for the judges to tell us the result, because I never saw it. But here we're looking at Jens Voigt. Now this is what happened earlier on. Voigt was in the first attack of the day at 7 kilometres. They caught him at 12. He attacked again and has been away for 100 kilometres. And now as they're coming back, he's gone again.
He's a tough nut, Jens Voigt. He's a tough nut to crack, and he doesn't want anybody to pull him back. He's hoping that this final acceleration might cause a split at the front end of the main field and just prolonging the agony, I think, because you can just see the main field there. They're in complete control of the situation here. They can pull these 3 riders back now whenever they want.
Well, Voigt is an incredible bike rider, and he's now riding what is for him his 6th Tour de France, as I've just said, and behind him now the field will feel they've got them, but if they start to turn off the gas, of course, with a man like Voigt, it's on you go again. Janek Tombak is the rider hitting the front now. He's in his first Tour de France, and the other rider here is still here just now, Voigt and Frank Renier of the Brioche La Boulangère. The experienced, well, not the experienced, but the newcomer ice, the experienced Bettini, they've gone back into the field, which is closing in rapidly.
Well, it's right on the tailcoats here, because you can see just at the front end of the main field, it's still blue and white, and that is the team of Alessandro Petacchi. Tombak insisting at the front end of this group of 3. Bettini, I think, deciding the better part of valor, really, to sit up and wait for the main field. The second sprint point of the day at Wannsee, 132 kilometres into the race, and we're still looking at 70 kilometres to go to the finish line.
And we're still waiting for confirmation of who got that sprint, but that would have been between Bettini and Voigt. And Voigt's still going away. He's making these boys earn the money today. He's not going to put the flag up at all. He's going to let them chase him down. He is a superb competitor, and now I think they've more or less got him. He's a good time trialist, is Jens Voigt, and he's won some big bike races in his career, but this time they said, what's the point? Look, they're right on us.
I think Tombak deciding there, the man from Team Cofidis, he's sitting up and allowing the main field to bring them all back together. It was a good attempt by Jens Voigt. He certainly is a very tough bike rider, but basically it's all back together thanks to the work of Alessandro Petacchi's team.
So in the town of Wannsee, we've got about 70 kilometres still to run. So as we look at the field now coming together for the first time for a couple of hours, actually, the average speed of the race is high, 42 kilometres an hour. That's just on 26 miles an hour. Everything to race for, as they say. We'll take a break.
You know, I've been dreaming of riding with Lance.
It's Lance Armstrong, it's Jan Ullrich, and here comes Bob Roll.
No. Now there's an easier way. Trek is giving away a private ride with the man himself. Enter to win at your participating Trek dealer, plus get huge yellow tag savings on hundreds of cycling products. Visit trekbikes.com to find your participating dealer and enter to win.
There's no doubt Lance's main lieutenant, Bob Roll, has had a fabulous tour.
Come ride with me.
And welcome back as we're looking now at the sprint here, which is just moments ago happened, and it seems the organisers put the banner in a different place because they wiped out the break, and Thor Hushovd got the sprint from the yellow jersey, Fabian Cancellara, and it was Gonzalez who took the third place bonus of 2 seconds. So Hushovd has nudged just a little bit up the overall classification. He's claimed 2 seconds on Fabian Cancellara. And these early bonuses, of course, are going to play a major part in the destiny of the next yellow jersey over these opening days. So as we watch down here at the riders, we have to remember that these sprints are also continually splitting the fields as they continue to race and decide who's going to make the next breakaway. So let's defy gravity now with the most awesome action sports athletes as they rip it up in Saturn's Gravity Files. And this will premiere tomorrow at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And that's Saturn's Gravity Files right here on OLN. 11:30 a.m. Eastern tomorrow. We're looking at the face here of Bradley McGee now. He's had a hard chase. Surely he's not in the same trouble again now, because if they've slipped off the back again, Paul. No, just coming on. It's been tough. They haven't really recovered from the chase, have they?
Well, they got up just at the wrong time, actually. They made the contact just before that hotspot sprint. The hotspot sprint at 132 kilometres covered.
We're hearing, Paul, that Hamilton is changing a bicycle on the right of the road, but we presume he's now behind the race. We might catch a glimpse of him here.
Well, there he is. That was just a quick glimpse. Just saw that happening, but I don't think it's anything to worry about really, because at the moment you can see the main field has slowed down dramatically, and I think he was probably waiting. He could have been involved in an incident earlier on, and he just waited for the right moment to actually change his machine.
Well, there is the absolute split now in the peloton, which has really happened again at the hotspot point there in Wannsee, which leaves us 70 kilometres still to ride. It's about 43 miles or so. Now, the rain is causing a lot of chaos back there now, because our head is full of shouts and screams from the French radio tour, reporting riders standing on the roadside with the wheels in the air. So what's happening now is the flints on the road, because it's raining, is getting through the tyres.
Look at this. This is Jens Voigt.
Here we go again.
It's Jens Voigt having another go. I think he's heard that there's a mechanical incident at the back to Tyler Hamilton, and he's been given the order by Tyler Hamilton's former team manager to go out and put the pressure on. There's Hamilton's group there. You can just see the green and white jerseys of Team Phonak, and maybe that's why this man, Jens Voigt, has gone out again.
Well, it sounds a little unfair to take advantage of a man who's having problems, but it happens. But they're coming up to Jens now, and on these rolling roads here, this is a tough area to race. It's not an area, in fact, other than when we have the major bicycle races, you see the Belgians race themselves very often, because they don't like the hills and they prefer to race in the Flemish speaking part, which is of course the Flanders area. But right now these boys are getting themselves under pressure. This has been a very exciting and interesting opening day. That looked like a shot there of Farazine, the replacement for Matty White.
Well, Cofidis have obviously had a problem too, because there's a lot of Cofidis riders at the back here trying to pace themselves back into the main field. Radio Tour is telling us that Tyler Hamilton has got 4 teammates alongside him to try and pace him back into the main field. I think it was just a moment he waited for a lull in activities to change that machine and ride himself back into the main field.
He probably damaged it, Paul. He did fall off coming down that hill, and he's waited, he thought, to the best time to make the change. So we seem to be totally committed with our cameras right now, so it looks like we can't even show you pictures of that. This is the rear of the race, as we're looking now at the field closing in ever so slowly.
Well, they should come back. You can see the main field swelling across the whole width of the road, and that means the pressure's off, because of the fact we still have got a very long way to go down to the finish line. Everybody's going to take a breather, take on board some drink, eat for a little bit to try and keep the energy levels topped up, and then I think we'll accelerate once we get closer to the finish.
Well, we're not too far away from the last 40 miles of the day now, as the field continue to regroup, having been knocked around rather a lot on their journey through the difficult climbs. So there we have the field out there, as they're looking pretty good now as they start to rejoin. Tyler Hamilton's had a very, very difficult day. He's had a crash and a change of bike so far. Anyway, let's take a look, if it comes down to a sprint now, at the Energizer long-lasting athlete of the day. Who else but Alessandro Patacchi? Here's Paul Sherwen.
Entering last season, Alessandro Patacchi wasn't considered to be a major threat among the elite sprinters in the cycling world. That quickly changed as the Italian exploded onto the scene in 2003, setting a new record by taking 15 combined stage wins at the Grand Tours. He was so quick that if you blinked at the finish, you could have missed him, and many of his competitors did. With the help of his Fassa Bortolo lead-out train, Patacchi established himself as the fastest man on 2 wheels.
This year's campaign has proven that last season was no fluke. 6 weeks ago, Alessandro Petacchi was unbeatable at the Giro d'Italia, setting a modern-day record. There, collecting an incredible 9 stage wins. On stage 15, he rocketed to the line and was clocked at the amazing speed of 43 miles an hour. Now, in most neighborhoods around the world, that would get you a speeding ticket. His supremacy, though, will be challenged by Mario Cipollini and Eric Zabel, the 2 veteran sprinters. But this year's field is full of fast men, including last year's points winner Baden Cook and the ever-dangerous Robbie McEwen from Australia. Petacchi will no doubt be a marked man in the peloton on the flat stages, but once the finish line is locked into his sights, it's a difficult task to stop the man they call Ale Jet.
Thanks, Paul. Well, Petacchi, of course, still very much in the hunt to get a stage win today and a possible yellow jersey with the win bonus it contains. The field all together as we speak now, 40 miles left to the finish. And as I said last time, they've got everything to race for once again. Mercy to the race and thanks to the riders. Yes, we all agree with that. And welcome back as we continue our coverage of the Tour de France, and the field are now more or less all together. There on the right is Lance Armstrong, as we look at him now riding along in his green jersey. Most of the riders now have taken off their wet weather wear because the rain seems, and we hope, is going away. But as we look at these pictures, we are again hearing about a crash at the back of the race, but I don't think our cameras have been able to get themselves into a situation to show us the pictures. No numbers, no names, which is a good sign it's not very serious. Well, they're now riding into a headwind, Paul, which might keep them together for a little while here. As the field now... the riders have had a rough ride so far, are now going to try and reshuffle the pack and get to the front of the group and try and get a bit of an easier ride.
Well, that's the important thing, I think, for many of these riders. Riders like Bradley McGee and Mario Cipollini, who've had to chase for around about 40 kilometres, will try and recuperate, but they will certainly try and place themselves at the front end of the main field, because they know if there is another split, they're almost certainly going to get caught out once again. But the big advantage, I think, for everybody is that once we've got the first part of this race out of the way, it is actually a much easier rolling run in towards the finish line in Charleroi.
We've just got one more big time bonus sprint to come, which comes at 48 kilometres from the finish. Then, of course, the big sprint itself, which carries time bonuses, 20 seconds for the win, 12 and 8 for the first 3 riders of the line. And in these early days, it can readjust it. We had a breakaway of 5 riders, which has been out front from about the 12th kilometre. They were finally swept up with 70 kilometres left to ride, so they had a nice long breakaway. And it's given one of them, and I think it'll be Bettini, an early lead in the King of the Mountains competition, but we need to get confirmation of that later. But he was out front for the whole of the mountain section. Well, they're not mountains, they're just sharp little climbs here, but they're not easy climbs, and there's plenty of them, of course. There's the whole field now. Despite the rain, the Belgians have lived up to their reputation as great supporters of the sport, and they've stood on the roadside just about wherever they can.
I think we can look now at a lull in hostilities for the next 20, 30 kilometres or so until we get just that little bit closer to the finish. Team Fassa Bortolo have expended a lot of energy to bring this race back together, to make sure that they pull back that leading group of 5 riders who never really got a huge advantage. The maximum was 3 minutes 45 seconds, and that was because, Phil, the teams of the sprinters were being very attentive. They wanted to make sure there was no early morning breakaway.
Well, there was an early morning breakaway, but it got caught early in the afternoon.
Yeah, what I meant to say was I was actually casting my mind back to a certain first day of the Tour de France when there was a huge breakaway of Claudio Chiappucci, Steve Bauer, Frans Maassen.
Ah, yes.
And on that moment, it turned the race completely and utterly upside down, and I think everyone was being very attentive for that today.
Yeah, that was in 1989, I think, wasn't it? So we're looking at Kim Kirken here from Luxembourg, the new champion there, leading up the race as you go. Well, there's the field as we look back now. Lance Armstrong riding today in green. It'll be yellow tonight. We'll take a break. And this is an aerial view brought to you by Trek. The whole peloton now are looking very, very tight and composed down there. As far as we know, more or less everybody together. I'm sure there are 1 or 2 riders right behind. Lance Armstrong, remember, today wearing the green jersey. He's not the points leader. That would be Cancellara, who won yesterday, but of course he is in the back he is the leader, so he gets the yellow today. Lance is on loan with the green. So for exclusive race highlights and behind the scenes action, AOL members go to keyword Tour de France. That's AOL members go to keyword Tour de France. So good tempo riding now. It looks Phonak here, the team of Tyler Hamilton, had a crash and a change of bike so far today, so it's been a busy day for a man who's not figuring on featuring on today's stage. He has now got himself up near the front of the race and hopefully out of trouble. The yellow jersey is Cancellara, the green jersey is that of Lance Armstrong, and there you can see him now, and he's found himself some teammates. Floyd Landis off to the right. These are the boys who are going to look after Lance now, and it looks as though Cancellara has chosen to ride not too far behind Lance Armstrong. He might learn a few tips, because Cancellara riding his first Tour de France.
You certainly could learn a few tips from Lance Armstrong about where to place yourself in the main field. Here's the man who was in the breakaway earlier on, and this is the big German sprinter Bernard Eisel. Just having a quick talk there with the technical director of the Tour de France, a former teammate of mine, Jean-Francois Pecheux, who in fact in his own right was a very good sprinter.
Yes, I think he's asked for permission there to drop back to look for the doctor, because I think he might want something sprayed onto that arm. He took a little bit of a bang, and he's probably quite embarrassed about that, because it was rather an amateurish thing to do, touch the wheel of the rider in front of you when you're having a chat with your team manager, but he certainly went down. There's his team car. Now, I think, in fact, they've called up the doctor, and that's the doctor coming up behind.
Yeah, it's so easy to do, though, because there's so much pressure on the first day of the Tour de France. Everybody's nervous. The team manager's usually pretty nervous as well, and they came up alongside, and in that moment of confusion, he was actually trying to talk to the team manager, and a rider in front slowed him down.
So it's now got down, after all of the action of the foothills of the Flemish, of the Belgian Ardennes rather. It's now more or less what we call tempo riding now, Paul, keeping a steady pace at the front, trying to stop anybody attacking if they can, and the sprinters start thinking about winning the end of the day.
It's always a funny expression, that tempo riding. It sounds so easy, but in fact the tempo that these riders are cruising along at the moment is well in excess of 25 miles an hour. There's Armstrong, very happy to sit at the front. Now this is the Dr. Gerard Porte there, just investigating the injury there to Bernard Eisel, and I think what he's just looking at is the collarbone. That is the most common injury a bike rider gets, because when he goes down, he usually goes down with his hands, and that can just snap the collarbone, or in this case it might have dislocated it, but I think he's okay, and I think the doctor will give him the all clear to carry on.
Yeah, smile on the doctor's face, good sign, reassuring the rider it's all okay, so just go and get back into the pain of suffering in the Tour. But you know, that was a nasty touch of wheels, and it was rather a silly mistake by Bernard Eisel, and he certainly took a rather heavy fall. Lucky really, he never touched anybody else, and lucky his bike bounced away from him, I suppose, when he did go down. But anyway, he's back for a checkup, he's out of the surgery, now he's got to get back to work.
Back to work, because everybody has to finish every stage of the Tour de France, and they have to finish inside the elimination time if they want to carry on and race for the next day. Armstrong is quite remarkable, Phil. There he is in around about 8th position, riding at the front end of the main field, and for 3,500 kilometers, that's probably the position he will adopt for the next 22 days of bike racing, just to make sure that he doesn't get involved in the other those silly little incidents which could cost him the chance of winning this bike race for the 6th time and making him the outright record holder of victories here.
Not too far now, in fact, Paul, from the third and final bonus sprint. We hit it at 30 miles to go, and we're about maybe 5-6 miles, 7 or 8 kilometers away. So they're going to start to speed up a little bit. This could be a very crucial sprint right now, because the field is all together. Because there's 2 races at stake here. There's the time bonuses for the riders in the yellow jersey competition, and there's the points for riders who want to win the green jersey competition. Alessandro Petacchi has said he wants to go for that green jersey.
He certainly does, but I think what he'll first do is concentrate on getting himself stage victories. Fabian Cancellara, I would think, will be quite happy now, Phil, because he got himself 4 time bonus seconds out on the course, and he now has an advantage of 6 seconds over Lance Armstrong. That's a nice little buffer for the next couple of days.
Yeah, it's a lovely feeling, isn't it, at this stage of the Tour. So, looking at the field here as it continues on the way, and all under the control of Fassa Bortolo just now. So, Here's one for you. Enter Trek's Ride with Lance giveaway and go to trekbikes.com to find your participating dealer. Well, it looks as though the team of Jan Ullrich, there he is licking his lips, is also coming up here now. Now this could also be crucial for this final sprint. It's a little way down the road because he will watch. If Armstrong goes for that time bonus sprint, he will have to follow. And I think that's the very important thing to note. Anyway, as the race continues, let's have another break. Welcome back. There's a nice shot of Lance Armstrong looking very comfortable, and look who's alongside him now. That's Sergei Ivanov, the teammate of Jan Ullrich, who's just behind. Now we are hearing there is a problem at the back of the race here because Brad McGee is also still struggling at the rear. So there we are now, Sergei Ivanov continuing to ride at or near the front. The peloton here preoccupied now as they start to take on possibly a drink or two. The roads are drying out, and that in itself is good, but the rain is still hovering around us on the Ardennes today.
Yes, that's why everybody's nervous, especially this first day on the open road. I only hope that it does dry up before we cross the border into France, because let's not forget, when we go across the borders into France, it's going to be very difficult because of the fact that we go over some cobblestone sections.
Well, there's the peloton. One man, though, Paul, who's not enjoying it at all today, Brad McGee. I'm rather sorry for Brad McGee because he's been off the back. He did a bad ride yesterday. As you say, he's made a stiff program for himself. He's hoping to get a gold medal in the Olympic Games. I think he's overdone it, and it might not be a bad thing if he doesn't go too far in this year's Tour.
Well, I think he dug deep into his reserves much too heavily in the Giro d'Italia, because we were both very impressed by his performance in the big mountains, not only in the time trials, but in fact for a man who is looking at an Olympic gold medal in the team pursuit, or the individual pursuit I should say, to push himself so hard over the big mountain passes, one day or another you've got to pay the bill for those efforts, and I think he might be paying that bill this afternoon.
You could be right. Anyway, he's having a bad day in the saddle, that is for sure, but he's not alone. He can take comfort from that perhaps, and we're not too far away now, probably just a couple of miles from the next time bonus sprint of the day. I'm conjuring with the thought here, is Lance Armstrong going to get into the mix? And that is why Ullrich has taken closer order with him. He can't afford really to let Lance pinch another 6 seconds time bonus and put him over 20 seconds behind, because those two boys are pretty equal on ability. But I've also seen Thor Hushovd up there, and he is the most likely next wearer of the yellow jersey at the moment.
Most likely he's just got to get himself a few more seconds out on the open road. He's pulled himself 2 seconds back to the lead. He's 8 seconds behind the Swiss leader Fabian Cancellara, but he has the ability of getting himself a top 3 finish at the end of the stage. He's been riding very well this year, Thor Hushovd. He's proven to be an excellent sprinter, but you can just see now everyone's starting to get nervous as we approach this next sprint point of the day.
Yes, the pace is now being picked up, everybody getting twitchy, seeing who is moving up on their shoulder. The Crédit Agricole boys, quite clearly, they're the teammates of Thor Hushovd, and they are looking to lead him out. Now, Thor is the rider just nipping in and out of the tail of those two boys in green in the white jersey, because he's wearing the colours of his country's champion, as he did the double just about 10 days ago and won both the time trial and the road race back home in Norway. And you know, when you look down at your sleeves and you see you in your national champion colours, it does give you that added piece of bonus of feeling good, doesn't it?
Big motivation to ride your national jersey in a race like the Tour de France. There are just 2 riders in front of him in the green and white jersey. Is the leader of the Crédit Agricole team, Christophe Moreau, and he may well be the man who will turn up the gas as we get down to the last kilometre or so, because it's a big opportunity for this French team here to try and get the lead in the first week of racing.
Well, it'll be a terrific achievement if he does, and he'll be one, I think, only 2 Norwegians ever to lead the Tour de France. I'm not absolutely sure, but I think Knutsen once led the Tour de France.
Ooh, you've got the jump on me there, Phil. I know he led the Giro d'Italia on many occasions. He was an excellent time trialist, but I'm not sure of his Tour de France performances over the years. But Hushovd, certainly we've seen him at both ends of the classification. There's Armstrong in the middle of the pack in the green jersey, not riding too far away from his former lieutenant, Roberto Heras, who has now jumped ship and leads and captains the Liberty Seguros team of Spain.
Yes, there's such a great depth of field here this year, and that's why everybody is optimistic about a great Tour de France, and I think we're going to have one. It's been full of stories already, and we're only on day 2 and stage 1.
as we look at the whole field.
Yeah, we'll see a Sear moving forward there as well in the red and white jerseys. There is going to be a battle in the next few kilometres for the time bonus sprint, because Jens Voigt has already got himself some bonus points out on the course. Thor Hushovd is a very good sprinter from the green and white jerseys there of Crédit Agricole. He in fact is in a different coloured jersey. He's in 4th position there in that line of Crédit Agricole riders, and he will be looking to try and get himself that little bit closer to the lead. It's always like this in the first week of racing at the Tour de France. The battle is for seconds, and then all of a sudden, once we get to the big mountains, the battle is for minutes.
Now, when you see the riders go occasionally out of focus, it's not the skill of our cameraman, by the way. It is the exhaust fumes coming from the helicopter, so don't adjust your sets. But we're looking now at a good lead out here for Hushovd. He is 8 seconds, I think it is, Paul, off the possible yellow jersey at the moment, and so he needs these. There's the 1 kilometre sign. This is the view from the back.
And one man I didn't see, but I presume he must be there, is in fact Tom Boonen, because you've got the blue and white jerseys there of David de Moncuisa. There's the white jersey. That is Tom Boonen. He's up in 5th place now. He's not too far behind, and he will battle over the next couple of days to try and get himself the lead as well.
Looks like Zanini leading them out here as well, and Boonen is the rider 4th in the wheel, and Boonen is the one man all of Belgium are hoping will give them a stage win before they say goodbye to the country tomorrow as we move into Belgium for the start of next week. As we come to 500 metres, now they're trying to lead out Boonen, but the yellow jersey is in the way as well. As Boonen starts to make the move, the yellow jersey is right on his wheel here. There's the lead out by all the quick-step boys. No sign of anybody else getting in on this. As Boonen now looks to set this up, he's going to take on Cancellara. A big effort by Tom Boonen, this one, as he looks like he might get 6 seconds. Watch out for the rest of the riders, though, because here comes Cancellara, and I think Boonen may have gone too soon here. He's going to be pipped on the backstead. He's trying to get in. I think Cancellara got it.
They were all over.
Cancellara got it.
He may well. That's a photo. We've got to go back and look at the photo there, because Cancellara looked to be failing. Let's have a look at it from this angle. There you can see the white jersey of Tom Boonen in the middle, being challenged by the Cofidis rider, but it's the lunge for the line there, and it, in fact, I think Cancellara got himself second place.
Cancellara.
I think he was second, but it's very close.
Well, you're going for second.
Much more accurate to see from the side view, but it was very close.
Well, I think that was Jimmy Casper who's taking the sprint out with. It doesn't really matter as far as the bonuses go, but Cancellara was best of the rest. That is significant. Well, that was a great sprint. Now we can expect to see a lot of counter-attacks here, because we're down to the last 48 kilometres to go. Let's have a look again. I think we can have a look at a replay of that, but I'm not sure it's going to help, to be quite honest, because it was underneath the trees. But this is now an immediate attack from the front of the field as Cancellara recovers from that effort, and that's a great sign. Cancellara, a sprinter and a time trialist, and I think that he's going to be a big discovery. There we go. Now the lead out for Boonen went too early. I think that's Casper on the left, but the man on the right and Bagstead on the far left. It was close. But welcome back. Well, we're looking here at 5 riders trying to catch the 2 men we just saw trying to break away. Mark Wouters of Rabobank and Jacob Peel of CSC. They're just ahead up the road as we continue now heading towards Charleroi. We're about 28, 29 miles from the line. These are the 2 leaders. 12 tours under those wheels for Mark Wouters, setting the pace. And on one occasion when he won the stage in Antwerp, he was a hero in Belgium because he got the yellow jersey. And he's going to try and do it again today, but he's got a bit of work to do yet. As you can see by the umbrellas, it's still drizzling, but it's not seriously heavy out there, the rain. They're the 5 riders. We haven't managed to identify them yet, as we're now looking behind the peloton, really working hard now to try and bring it all together. So don't forget that tomorrow we continue our coursing through the roads of Belgium, and we'll be with you, of course, live. This is our AOL for Broadband pre-race show, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Live, of course, at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, prime time, 8 p.m. Eastern and Pacific. Tour de France all day long here on OLN, and tomorrow it'll be stage 2 as we head from Charleroi to Namur. These are the 2 leaders, and they are working. The 5 riders, by the way, the result of the sprint, just to confirm it, as the American flags fly high, it was an Australian, Stuart O'Grady, who got the sprint just ahead in the photograph over Tom Boonen of Belgium, and Cancellara was given 3rd. But I have to say, I don't agree with that at all, because there's no
No.
way when I saw it, it was Cancellara. who got
Cancellara
second.
was absolutely second, and Tom Boonen was most certainly third. I mean, the man in the yellow jersey, you could not mistake him. There could be doubt between O'Grady and Cancellara, but certainly not the fact that Boonen was in third place.
It'll come right in the end, I'm sure about that. But as we, you know, I really felt, for me, Paul, that was a very close sprint as they came to the line. But once they got to the line, I really think that Cancellara had done enough to get second place. He certainly didn't win it, there's no doubt about that. O'Grady got it on the line. The judges will forgive them, because it's so easy. Once they look at the photos, they'll put it right on the overall classification. I'm sure about that.
This is the counter-attack now of 5 riders. They are 20 seconds behind the leading 2. Fabio Baldato is the rider with the little goatee beard on there from Alessio. In there as well, you can just see this is Laurent Brochard in the white jersey coming to the front, the former world champion. And of course, there's a man just sitting on the back there. And that man for Fassa Bortolo is a man who will not participate at all. And I think that is Marco Vello.
Yeah.
Now, he was involved in a crash in the prologue yesterday and lost himself a fair amount of time.
Yes, we're just about getting confirmation here. That looks like Laurent Brochard, former world champion from AG2R, Sebastian Eno, Crédit Agricole. And so that's pretty much the lineup now. Baldato, Vello, Sebastian Eno, Laurent Brochard. And I think there is one other rider in that breakaway as well.
It's Thomas Vaucler, the national champion
of France, yes, that's him. So looking now at these 5 chasers, they seem to have thrown in the towel, because the chase was too consistent for them by the sprinters teams. So Thomas Vaucler, the champion of France in the blue there, he's now put back in the group along with Baldato, Vello, Sebastian Eno and Laurent Brochard.
I think the main field don't mind letting a small group of 1 or 2 riders get clear, because they feel that they've got the ability to pull them back as we get closer towards the end. But if they were to allow a group of 6 or 7 riders to go clear, they're a little bit more worried about the fact that they wouldn't be able to reel them back in as we get down towards the finishing line. This man, in fact, won a stage in the Tour de France last year in a 2-man breakaway, and that was up against Fabio Sacchi, and it was quite amazing, because if you remember back to that occasion, with about 1 kilometre to go, they shook hands and then they sprinted in a drag strip
finish, yes.
And it was quite remarkable, because it was a very close finish, and Jakob Piel got himself across the line in first place.
Yeah, great victory. Everybody wants to win a stage of the Tour de France, of course. Not many riders get the opportunity. But these 2 boys, as you see, 35 seconds is the gap now, so they're just edging away, but the sprinters might feel they've got this under control. About 26 miles from the finish is the moment, and 2 good workhorses here, 2 strong, experienced men, Jakob Piel and 12-time Tour rider Mark Wouters, who last year finished the Tour 115th, but he's not in the Tour to win it. He's in to help his team do well, and if he gets the chance, grab a stage. He's done it once before in Antwerp in 2001, and that's Belgium, of course. He'd love to do the same again here on this visit through Belgium. So there we are, looking at the 2 riders in the lead, 35 seconds. And just a little bit of a reminder for you as well, as we look at this. Today's word of the day is Lance. Log on to olntv.com to find out more and enter for a chance to win an amazing cycling trip which will take you through France in OLN's Tour de France sweepstakes. That's Lance. There's a nice shot of the whole of the US Postal Team as they tell us 41 kilometers to go, 25.5 miles.
Green jersey, strangely enough, on the shoulders of Lance Armstrong, and I'm trying to rack my brains here, Phil, and remember whether or not Lance Armstrong has worn the green jersey in the Tour de France before, and yes, of course he did. It was in 2000 when he finished second in the opening day time trial to David Miller.
Yeah, how can you forget that, Paul? Yes. And that Lance Armstrong, by the way, in his 10 tours, this is his 10th, has won 16 individual stages, if we're going to start throwing all these statistics out just now. There's the split in the peloton as they go both sides of the road. The roads, of course, throughout the Tour de France, closed for many, many hours, totally closed. Nobody goes on them unless you are a pedestrian awaiting the arrival of the event. It really does stop the world through each district it passes through. And in the mountains this year, where they are expecting it predominantly in the Alps, many, many, many thousands of people that we may even be counting in the millions, and that is no exaggeration. They are talking of closing the roads up to 40 hours before. So if you're planning on spectating in the Alps, you must think of getting in there before the riders start before the police rather start shutting down the roads.
Almost certainly, if you want to get a place, you definitely need to get there 2 or 3 days before. These two riders, they're not thinking about the Alps at all right now. All they're thinking about is building up an advantage over the front end of the main field. There was Roberto Heras riding very close to the front. Daniele Nardello is nice and comfortably at the front end of the main field, and so is his leader Jan Ulrich, being very attentive on this opening road stage.
Word coming to us. 1 minute is the gap now. They are continuing to move ahead at a crucial stage of the race. So looking at the whole peloton, 2 men only out in front, Wouters and Jakob Piel. They should be still away when we get back after the break. And welcome back. Yes, indeed, everybody. Happy 4th of July. For all of you watching in the United States, the Tour de France now courses along Belgian roads, running into the last 30 minutes of racing now, as the peloton still chasing those 2 riders out front. There's the face there of Jakob Piel. And that's Kim Kirken looking across. There's big Magnus Bagstedt, the winner of Paris-Roubaix this year. And Jan Ulrich just tucked off to our left, running into the last 20 miles of race. About 40 minutes of racing, I think, more accurately here. A lot of tempo routing, the face there of Lance Armstrong in the green jersey. These are hard, these last few miles, no matter how good you are, because the speed is edging up towards 30+ miles an hour as they keep the pressure on. But despite this, we've still got Wouters and Piel pushing the lead out. And it's gone out now to 1 minute and 25 seconds. Paul, that is getting to be a little bit of a concern, 1 minute and 25, so close to home.
Bit of a worry, I should think, for the main contenders for the stage victory this afternoon, and they will be taking a very close note of that, and that's why we can see one rider from Fassa Bortolo moving to the front, whipping up the tempo. But with it, they will expect some help to come a little bit later on from teams like Robbie McEwen's Lotto squad, because let's not forget we are racing in Belgium. Lotto is a Belgian team, and although Robbie McEwen is very much an Australian, he has a lot of support here in Belgium and speaks absolute fluid Flemish.
Well, I'll tell you what, they're now saying on race radio it's gone up again to 1 minute and 35 seconds, so they're still nosing ahead. The crowd are going to love this. A Belgian rider taking on Jakob Piel of Denmark. Piel riding in his 3rd Tour de France. He finished 117th in 2001, 125th and 113. So he's now riding, in fact, his 4th tour. He's completed every one so far.
Well, they're working very well together, and they need to try and build up an advantage. Jakob Piel is a very good individual time trialist as well, and making an ally here of Mark Wouters, who's 2 times to be the national time trial champion of Belgium. It's a fine working duo.
This is the face of Mark Wouters, who is now looking at a possible stage victory here. He'll have a tough battle with Jakob Piel. They've nudged out 1 minute and 35 seconds over the field, and if he gets much more, the field might find they've lost control of the leaderboard as they run down towards the finish. About 35-40 minutes maximum left to race now into Charleroi. Inspiration for Mark Wouters, déjà vu perhaps, because when the race went through Belgium not long ago, he got the yellow jersey for a day when he won in Antwerp. So he is a man for the occasion, one of the most experienced riders in the peloton, Mark Wouters.
Yeah, and on that occasion he actually got himself the yellow jersey as well, and it was all a question of seconds, because his win on that occasion gave him the advantage over Stuart O'Grady, who was in the breakaway, and I think O'Grady was very upset by the fact that he missed out in that sprint. But Mark Wouters is a very experienced bike rider, as that time gap now stretches out to 1 minute and 37 seconds. Oof. And I hope this is not the last time we see the Titanic.
I was going to say, I know it's been a bit of rain around, Paul, but the tide never came in that far up, I don't think. But there's the peloton. You get an idea of just how fast they are travelling when we look out of the window of the helicopter. 1:37, that's the best gap they have had since they got away. This is life now at the back of the peloton. These riders just happy to see the end of the day. And One or two will be quite sore because you'll catch glimpses of riders with ripped shorts and bleeding elbows because there's been a few fallers when the rain came in the heart of the Ardennes. Interesting to see the teammates in blue here of Lance Armstrong have got him to the front of the race to try and avoid him being involved now in any accidents, and that was the wise thing to do. There's our great Gendarme National. These are French policemen working on Belgian roads, by the way, as they guide the riders safely around the countryside. Well, there they are, all looking at each other, see who's going to make up the pace. That's Pizzato with his shorts ripped off, but still working well at the front. Well, the ship hasn't sunk yet, and neither have we. We'll take a break. Rejoin us on OLN. Welcome back. Live pictures are here on OLN of the Tour de France as we go round in circles now, heading towards the finish in Charleroi. For the riders, it's been a long way. There's a much shorter way by car to the town of Charleroi from Liège. These boys have been touring through the hillsides of the Belgian Ardennes, making up a total today of 125 miles. Two riders are stealing a march over the field, and the lead now has gone out to almost 2 minutes. These are not two ordinary riders, so time and time again we see them wiped out before the finish, but 1:54 is a good lead. They're still gaining as we approach the finish, which is just inside 20 miles to go now. Jakob Piel himself hasn't had a win this year, but he did in this race last year. Former national champion and winner of the Tours of Denmark and Sweden in the past. Also, Mark Wouters riding his 12th Tour de France. He's had the yellow jersey once in his career, and he's won a stage once, and it was also in Belgium, in Antwerp, not too far away. But then in Belgium, nothing is too far away. So they're two good riders to make this sort of move, as they now start to nose out a little bit further. Little chance to pan down the camera. There's number one. Need I tell you any longer who he is? He's worn it for the last 4 years as defending champion, Lance Armstrong. Now looking to win this race for a 6th time, and that is an enormous difficult thing to do. We know that because nobody else has ever done it. Looking rather casual, leaning on his handlebars here is the riders from Fassa Bortolo as they continue the pace. That is Pizzato with his shorts ripped off. He clearly fell today, but he's been number 2 wheel for ages. And there, if you're wondering where your bicycle's gone today in Belgium, well, they're using it in the local agricultural area here because the artists have been at work again. How do they think of all these things, and well done.
Absolutely magnificent, and everything is done as a celebration of cycling, a celebration of the Tour de France. It's not very often that it goes outside the boundaries of the great hexagon of France, and at the back end of the main field, these riders now are thinking about how close they're getting to the finishing straight. There's Matty Wilson, and the time gap still being given officially at 1:45 for the two leaders. Now, if it's 1:45 at 20 kilometers to go, it's going to be touch and go, and they may well just survive.
Well, these are the pacemakers. That's Mark Wouters, who's looking very concentrated now, isn't he? The tandem Denmark-Belgium takes on the rest of the Tour de France. The latest gap coming at us, 1:45. There's plenty of room there to win this stage today. They've got no time to shadow box. They're going to have to help each other, rivals or not, to hold off the whole field. But these boys have been through this pain before. They know what they're up against, and they're going to give it a go.
One thing they have to do is make sure that they evenly share their efforts. It's no good at this point of the game trying to hold back and try and play the clever bike rider, reserving a small amount of energy for the final sprint, because if you do that, you won't have enough time advantage when it comes down to the last 10 kilometers, because let's never forget, a charging main field comes into the outskirts of these towns at speeds approaching 40 miles an hour, and you can wipe away an advantage of 2 minutes in absolutely no time at all.
Yes, you can. You can hear the crowds, those shouting. They will know exactly what's coming at them, of course, because they'll have radios on, transistors. They'll probably be in local cafes watching it on television before they run out to the roadside. And they've got a Belgian in the lead, and that's what they want. There's the field, the arrowhead forming, and all of the riders on the front. Fassa Bortolo trying to drag their sprinter Alessandro Patacchi back into this race. A win is a win, but he won't be interested in third place.
1 minute and 55 seconds. It continues to climb, the advantage of those two leaders. And I am, Phil, a little bit surprised about that, because I would have expected the teams of the sprinters to start whipping up the pace right now, because they could be cheated of their victory.
I think it's a fabulous time gap, and it's going to cause a slightly confused finish today for the sprinters, that's for sure. Well, there they are. The two riders are just standing there at the end of the road and looking very, very good now. I think this man here is going to have a fabulous race. Let's remind you, for exclusive race highlights and behind-the-scenes action, AOL members go to keyword Tour de France. So onward they go. The miles or the kilometres, they're both ticking off anyway. These two riders may have made the move of the day. There was the attack for you. We'll take a break.
Phil Liggett, Paul Sherwen, Al Trautwig, and Bob Roll. A great race needs a great team. The Cyclism Tour de France. Brought to you in part by Subaru.
Welcome back to OLN's live coverage today of the Tour de France. Stage 1, remember, you've missed nothing while we've been away. These two riders are still clear and looking very solid. They've lost 5 seconds of the lead now. It's 1 minute and 50 seconds. But time is running out for the peloton, who are now getting reinforcements coming through, because Fassa Bortolo are receiving more pacemaking assistance now from Lotto and from Quick-Step, who also have possible winners on their team today in the sprint. Well, they're getting these little rises now, Paul. We're still out in the hillside as we head towards Charleroi. We started the race here back in the mid-70s, and that brought to the fore a new name in world cycling at the time, Didi Turau.
Yeah, it certainly did, and Francesco Moser was the man who won the prologue in Charleroi on that occasion, and that was the first attempt to win the prologue, and in his first attempt at the Tour de France, and he went on to become a master of Paris-Roubaix, winning the event on 3 occasions. In fact, strangely enough, I saw him on the finish line not more than 10 minutes ago.
Did he look his age?
He looked actually very fit, and he still rides his bike an awful lot. He's a magnificent bike rider, and I think he probably still puts in about 10 or 15,000 kilometers a year.
Often reminds me of what Lance Armstrong says, you know, you've got to love to ride a bike before you learn to suffer like a dog in races like this, because it is such a hard sport, and if you didn't enjoy actually riding a bike and feeling the freedom of the countryside, you would certainly never put yourself through the sort of agonies of a big-time bike race. And today we've seen the riders go through the colder weather into the cold rain. They've bounced off the road, they've changed the bikes, and they're still all down there. Just gone under the 25 kilometre to go, which puts us on about 15 miles from the finish. Now that should send alarm bells ringing, because there we are, 1:45 the gap.
They're starting to pick up the pace, and I think Fassa Bortolo will be very happy with the fact that the teams of the other sprinters are at the front end of the main field, helping to whip up the pacemaking. There's a big question mark on Mario Cipollini, who was dropped in the early part of the race, had to chase for 30 kilometers to pull himself back into the main field. I have a feeling he won't be fighting it out with the younger sprinters like Alessandro Patacchi, Robin McEwen, and let's not forget the Australian Baden Cook.
Cookie will be itching for it, and we mustn't forget O'Grady. You didn't mention O'Grady then, did you?
I did
because
not.
I must say, I think O'Grady also now desperately wants a win, and it'll be for Matt White if he gets it, because I think the whole bunch was sorry yesterday when Matt White crashed. He ran over a television cable that was being laid. He fell very heavily. He's going no speed at all, broke his collarbone, never got to start the race, and I think that was really a very, very sad thing for a man who's tried for years to get selection. He gets selection and he doesn't start. Look at the crowds here now as they start to cut through them, driving relentlessly on. We're now around 14 miles from the finish now, which is about 23 kilometers to go. They've still got a big chance. In fact, the peloton is going to have to breathe in, or the crowd move out here to get them through the gap.
Big crowd turning out for the Tour de France in Belgium. It's always very much like this, and we're going to stay in Belgium again tomorrow for the stage from Charleroi to Namur, before then heading across the borders into France the day after that. This is David Bramati on the front. We haven't seen him for a few years.
The big man on the Quick-Step team, Paolo Bettini, I think, but I'm not certain, might be the new leader in the King of the Mountains. He's on the same team today. Looks looking at the field there now. They've sent some big pacemakers up here now to try and lift this up. and keep it going. As the riders now continue, and as we will always continue with the Tour de France here. And don't forget, you can get inside edge for tour updates, highlights and previews in the OLN for Broadband Tour de France pre-race show, as OLN's coverage 2004 Tour de France will continue. Tomorrow at 8:30 AM Eastern, the cyclism is here, right here on OLN. So the two boys are still clear. They are about 13.5 miles from the finish. They know the pressure will about to be applied in that last 10 miles, but they do have a chance, and I think they somehow know that. Jakob Piel's face of concentration on the back wheel of Mark Wouters, but the peloton are not far away. We'll take another break here on OLN. And welcome back. Some spectators aren't quite animated by the passage of the Tour de France, but I'll tell you what, there is a chance that the big sprinters of the Tour might not get their day today on day one, because Mark Wouters and Jakob Piel are conserving 1 minute and 40 seconds of their breakaway, and the sprinters are running out of time, but they're coming. Well, this is Kim Kirken now, who's come to the front. They're not really organised here. Quick Step are also trying to help out because they've got a candidate in Tom Bonen. Rabobank are trying to spoil the party on the left of the picture there. US Postal, and that's Vyacheslav Yekimov there. They're just trying to keep Lance Armstrong out of trouble. But you never know, if they came together, Hincapie might have a go.
I've always wanted to see George Hincapie sprint for his own account because, you know, in the first part of his career, he was a great sprinter. But I think once you come to the Tour de France, it's complete dedication to one man. He has to ride just for Lance.
Looking down on the whole peloton, bar two then, as the two riders are still clear. Latest time check coming at us, 1 minute and 40 seconds. And Paul and I both feel at this peloton that there's some shadow boxing going on down there. They're not putting the weight into this because they don't want to carry somebody else's sprinter to the line. And I think that could be the only reason now that those two riders are staying clear by 1 minute and 40 seconds. David Bramati here trying again to get some life into the bunch to pull them back. They'll kill me for saying that because they're going quite quick, really.
They're going very quickly. We're looking at a speed of approaching 30 miles an hour as they go under the 20 kilometre to go banner here. That's 12.5 miles to the finish line, but they are certainly not stretched out in full anger. There are one or two teams sending riders forward. You can see the green and white jerseys here of Crédit Agricole. That is for Thor Hushovd. Hushovd has got a very good chance of getting himself into the yellow jersey at the end of the day, but it is still hovering the time gap at 1.5 minutes. It's not coming down quick enough.
12 kilometres to go, 1.5 minutes. Unless they suddenly slow now, I reckon that this catch, if it is going to come, will be in the last 2 or 3 kilometres of the day. Be very, very sad indeed if that happens. These boys have made their move and they're going for it, but they look as though their faces now are beginning to show signs of the effort.
The pain is creeping in now. It's starting to ache in every muscle in the body as you look to find some energy from somewhere else if you can. And the only place you can get that extra energy from is psychological energy. There you can see a line of dark blue jerseys. That's US Postal Service looking after the man in the green jersey. On this occasion, the green jersey is being worn by Lance Armstrong. But just look how they've actually got a rider sitting behind him as well. And the reason for that is in case he has a mechanical incident, the rider behind will be able to respond immediately and try and pass across a wheel or even a bike if necessary.
These are the days escapers now. They've been on television for almost an hour out in front. The sponsors will be delighted. Remember, it was Jens Voigt who's making the runny early on, and he was in that long, long breakaway. Now it's his teammate, Jakob Piel, who's in for the kill. Little flick of the right arm there. That's the way of telling the rider behind, come and give us a hand out, get up to the front, while Jakob takes a little break on the back wheel of Mark Wouters. Rivals they are, but they've got to stay friends now because it's 2 against the rest.
They have to stay friends now because, in fact, they've just lost another 10 seconds. They are starting to pick up the pace in the main field. I don't want to make any predictions just yet. I want to wait until I can see the time gap at around about 15 kilometres to go. But if it's a minute at 15 kilometres to go, I think they'll get caught. But this is a sad sight. This is the man who was the former World Pursuit Champion. This is the man who won the prologue time trial in the Tour de France last year and the Giro this year. Brad McGee is in all kinds of difficulty.
Well, I think we heard reports he wasn't feeling too well before he started the prologue. He also said he didn't feel confident enough to win it like he did last year because he's been down in the Pyrenees using the mountains and training there, blunted his speed. He actually said after the finish yesterday too that perhaps he better give up all this climbing malarkey and start going back to his pursuing strength. His strength is pure speed, but the fact that he has been dropped here by the peloton, I am exceptionally surprised now. This man, I think, is tired.
Very tired.
So there's the peloton with poor old Bradley McGee sitting just off the back of them. He's got a chance if they ease up. Not too sure they will ease up today. The Greyhounds are running. Now we've got to go and bring them back. We'll take a break on OLN.
You know, I've been dreaming of riding with Lance.
Armstrong's down. Bob, is that you? Oh, Bob, this is very, very bad.
No. Now there's an easier way. Trek is giving away a private ride with the man himself. Enter to win at your participating Trek dealer, plus get huge yellow tag savings on hundreds of cycling products. Visit trekbikes.com to find your participating dealer and enter to win.
The champagne between Lance and Johan, and here comes Roll. Not just a glass for you, eh, Bob?
Come ride with me.
And welcome back. The peloton now are working very, very hard indeed. They're waiting for the last time check as they've just passed under the 15 kilometres to go banner, just a little more than 9 miles, but they haven't got them yet, and they've got about a minute and a half advantage. Well, there's the peloton now passing under that 15 kilometres to go banner, so we'll get the time check very, very shortly. And as I speak, they're about to tell me it is 1 minute and 5 seconds, so suddenly the peloton has struck.
That's the way it goes. The peloton, when they realise that the victory is slipping away from them, they can turn up the crank, and that's what they've done now. They've turned it up to 65 seconds, the difference between themselves and the two leaders, while at the back this man is going through a real hard time. Bradley McGee is a talented bike rider. He's having a very difficult time staying in the bike race. He's looking down. He's actually a broken man at this moment. The only reason he's carrying on is because of his reputation, because of his courage, and because of the fact that nobody wants to abandon a race like the Tour de France. But he's going to have some serious discussions tonight with the team management.
Well, unless Bradley McGee says he wants to pack, he'll try again tomorrow, but then that will be the end of it. That's how close you ride together in a breakaway, by the way. Belgian riders are rank amongst the finest bike handlers in the business, I think, because they've got the most difficult roads to race over with all the cobblestones. But those tyres almost touching as they continue.
Look at Jakob Pyle there. You can see his shoulders starting to bend down, and that's a sign that the pain is really crying out in his body. He's put his body under pressure since these guys broke away, and now it's starting to pay. It's been a very difficult day. The weather conditions have not been ideal, and these men are beginning to weaken, and it will be a psychological blow to them because they will already have the information that from 1 minute and 55 seconds they have now already lost almost 1 minute of that.
Yes, and they're experienced bike riders. They know what's going to happen over these last few kilometres. They know the race is going to chase them down, but they've got to keep going because these bike riders, occasionally I have to point it out, are human, and they do make mistakes.
They make mistakes, but the main field very rarely makes mistakes when it comes to chasing down breakaways. A lot of tired bodies there, though, Phil. You can see a small line of riders at the front. Those are the riders doing the pacemaking. Those are the riders trying to pull it all back together. But I do feel that we've had a very difficult start to the Tour de France. There's the yellow jersey just down to the right-hand side. That is the news they've been looking for. They're inside of the 1 minute mark, 55 seconds. It's going to be difficult for the two leaders to stay away.
Yes, I think you're right. As we look at the riders, and the riders here now are continuing to be just in the shadow now, I think, of being caught, but let's hope they're not in many, many ways. Anyway, maybe they won't, but let's find out. Defy gravity with the most awesome action sports athletes as they rip it up in Saturn's Gravity Files. Premieres tomorrow, 11:30 a.m. Eastern. That's Saturn's Gravity Files right here on OLN. Out you go. So the field continue now to catch the group. I wonder if they'll make it. There's a long way round for you. I gives you the question, will they catch up? We'll find out when we come back after this break on. And welcome back on our two heroes late into the stage of today's stage of the Tour de France on OLN are still clear of the field, and the crowd are urging them on. They are inside 6 miles from the finish, but whether Mark Wouters and Jakob Pier will stay there much longer, well, it's highly debatable now, because the gap is closing rapidly, but the field haven't got them yet. Well, 42 seconds they're saying at the moment, as the field now seem to be getting themselves a little better organised. But having said that, Paul, it looks as though they've slowed down again.
That's the way it is. It's all nervous. It's all poker at the moment, waiting to see which team will get themselves organised on the front end of the peloton. Baden Cook is in there, I can see, not too far away, the white jersey, and he will be wondering what's happening to his team leader here, Bradley McGee, who's off the back end of the group, a man we expected to win the opening day prologue yesterday, just as he did 12 months ago. It just goes to show how the sport can turn itself upside down. All you need is a minor ailment and you have a hard time finishing the Tour, even on the flat stages.
Yes, it is amazing, because this is a young man who's done just about everything in world cycling. He's got Commonwealth Games gold medals on the track. He's been a world junior champion on the track. He's got Olympic Games bronze medals. He hopes to go to Athens and win a gold medal this year in the pursuit. But right now, he is either ill or very tired. So McGee being helped by the Australian champion there. Matty Wilson, as we swing back up to the leaders, still plenty of fight here. Running down into the final miles of the day, just over 7 miles still to run to the finish. These boys are going to fight to the line now. They're saying 30 seconds right now, so it's still coming down, hardly quickly though. At 7.5 kilometers to go, it's going to be close.
Very close indeed. Every time the road kicks up slightly, it really hurts these two riders, while the main field continues to incessantly close down upon them. That will not be good news for them. There's official confirmation of that time gap, but they might still think with 7 kilometers to go they've got a chance. But as long as the teams of the sprinters don't play too much poker in that pack behind, they have got a chance of organising themselves and pulling it back together.
Well, reorganisation, obviously a little bit of a slowing at the head of the peloton, because that's given other riders a chance to move their men forward, like a giant chess game this now, as they bring up more of the sprinters towards the front. To 28 seconds as I speak, so they're still chipping it off now, and they're going to sense the kill here. Fassa Bortolo moving up, that's Servais Canavan on the left of our picture too, and upcoming too on the far side, riders from the Lotto squad, who are also now trying to get their man Robbie McEwen into the play.
Those two riders can't afford to lose more than 4 seconds every kilometre now on the run in towards the finish line. But this slight incline on the outskirts of Charleroi, in fact, is hurting absolutely everybody. They've lost 2 seconds, but they need to lose 4 seconds a kilometre if they're going to get caught by the main field. That little red car just shooting out there as well is not good for the morale. That is the referee, and he has to move out once the gap gets below 30 seconds. Phil, I'm sorry, but that is not 30 seconds. It is almost over.
They are right there. This little hill here has hurt them tremendously as they run in, but this is one rider trying to get away from the group here.
Looks like an Alessio rider leaping out of the gap here.
It looks like Magnus Bagstedt to me. This looks like a very strong rider and a big boy who is coming clear of the field, and it's a move, a game which will spoil the day for the sprinters.
Well, this is a very good move, because this lone rider has got himself a very nice advantage. I don't think it is Magnus Bagstedt. It's not big enough to be Bagstedt.
No, I think it's Lundqvist, Marcus Lundqvist, who's gone clear.
Halfway across the gap, but when we saw the main field there, the whole of the field was together. It was very much, I would think, separated by 20 seconds. The main field, look at them all over the road, hovering, waiting for the moment to pounce, waiting for the moment to pull everybody back into the fold.
Well, this is Marcus Lundqvist, who has gone clear, and he's one of the stars of the future for Swedish cycling. Bagstedt himself said he's a good one. Well, that's a good tactical move to just try and see what happens if you've got the legs to get away from the field. And Lundqvist now is trying to cross the gap to reach the two leaders, and I think they'd be pretty pleased to see him just now.
Well, this actually has a two-pronged tactic here, because in fact he's acting just exactly like a carrot in front of a donkey for the main field. They push themselves to catch him while he's starting to bridge the gap across to the two leaders, and that will pick the pace up everywhere. These two men are still surviving. They have still got about 20 seconds over the front end of the main field.
who I think once they crest the brow of this incline will pick the pace up over the last 5 kilometres, and they'll be pushing 60 kilometres an hour, 40 miles an hour coming into town.
They are desperately close to that 5 kilometre banner now. We're virtually in the suburbs of Charleroi. And Marcus Lundqvist, in only his second Tour de France, he finished 131st last year. Sorry, not last year, 1999, when he last loaded the Tour de France, 5 years ago. He's getting the flavour again. Looking in the distance there, there's still a chance.
There is always a chance until you've been pulled back completely by the main field. Lundqvist is going to get pulled up. There's no problem about that, because he hasn't really ever got himself more than 55 metres off the front end of the main field. You can feel the nervousness now starting to get into that peloton. You can see the movement. Everybody wants to be at the front, but not exactly with their faces into the wind, because it is very difficult riding in the wind at speeds approaching 40 miles an hour. There's a lot of movement. The sprinters all want their position. There is a failure right now for Fassa Bortolo to control the front end of the main field, as we can see Mr. Armstrong moving up into the first few positions.
5 kilometres to go. That was Armstrong who decided to move right onto the head of the peloton there. And I wonder, and don't forget, we don't want to remind ourselves really, but the run-in last year, there was a massive pile-up at the finishing line. We don't want to see that again today, and in fact we think this finish is a great finish for the sprinters. Cancellara has shown us how to time trial yesterday. Earlier on today, he's also shown us how to sprint. At 5 kilometres to go, he is also in here, and there he is in yellow. Ulrich's team are moving to the front, but not for Jan Ulrich, but for ace sprinter Erik Zabel, 6 times a winner of the points competition.
Yaroslav Ekimov just kicking it up there to bring the pace up a little bit higher. I caught the long, slim figure of the T-Mobile rider, Rolf Aldag, who happens to be sharing a room at the moment with Erik Zabel. We've not spoken about Erik Zabel very much, but you can never discount him in a sprint. And last time the Tour de France came to Charleroi, who was the winner?
Erik Zabel on his birthday. Well, it's not the same date this year. His birthday runs on the 7th of July. I think it's the same date every year, so he can't win on his birthday today.
It's strange the way that works, isn't it? But I think Erik Zabel will certainly be super motivated coming back here. You know, if you've won in a place in your career, you're always motivated when a race goes back there. These two riders now have been suffering for a long time. They're looking back and they know the main field is whipping up the pace. They know the main field is not too far behind them, and they know that very shortly the teams of the sprinters must get themselves organised on the front end of the peloton. 4 kilometres to go, 2.5 miles, 15 seconds advantage.
It's at times like this, when you've worked this hard, they should give them the victory, but I'm afraid it doesn't work like that in professional sport, and they're out to hunt them down at 15 seconds. It's all over. It's only a matter of when. Mark Wouters, it worked for him last time when he won in Antwerp. It's not going to work this time. Jakob Piel, it worked for him last time when he won down in Marseille. It's not going to work for him this time either. I've noticed Gerald Steiner also had a crash. There's a crash in the field. I don't know if we'll see it, but we're hearing shouts on the race radio. There's the split in the peloton. And there is the chaos. And somebody has gone down. Oh, it's a Phonak rider. Now let's hope it's not... I don't think it's Tyler Hamilton. No, it's not Tyler Hamilton who's gone down.
Nicolas Jalabert.
Yeah, Nicolas Jalabert.
Well, this is what it's all about on the run into the finish. Just a small touch of wheels and somebody can go down, but everybody was alert at that moment. You see only one bike rider went down. Now we're approaching the outskirts of Charleroi. 3 kilometres to go. This is not going to take them very much more than 3 minutes. These two riders have not given up at all, and they have still got a breadth of chance in them. They're just hoping they can survive. But look at this. On the front, Cancellara is now whipping up the pace. And it's not to conserve his yellow jersey. It's to try and set up the line, what is normally the blue and white line of the big man from Italy, Alessandro Patacchi, the new sprinter on the block.
Unlucky Jalabert here, because that means he'll lose time today. Not a great concern, but a shame. Unnecessary loss of time. There was one of the rider, I think, either delayed or fell, but he got up as well, and he got out before we recognised who it was. But take a look at this now. Fabien Cancellara, the winner yesterday, his first Tour de France, not riding, not thinking long-term. He'll still be in yellow tomorrow, but right now, his world would be complete if Alessandro Patacchi won the stage. He's the boss.
He's the boss. He's the king of the sprint. 2 kilometres to go. That sign will tell the riders. And unfortunately, when they take the next left-hand bell, it goes right the way up up towards the finishing line. It's a long, hard line, a long, hard final kilometre. Cancellara on the front, shadowed there by Matteo Tossato, and not far away at the back end of that blue line will be Alessandro Patacchi. And all of the sprinters, Phil, will be fighting to get into his wheel, and it looks to me like now it is all over for the two leaders, and that is tough.
At 1.5 kilometres from the finish and a long straight up to the line shortly, they have pulled back those two leaders. There is the catch as they come round that left-hander. So close, yet so far. Wouters looks across at the bunch. He'll see what he expects. The riders from Fassa Bortolo leading the charge as they are caught. And now it's AG2R for Kersipou who has come to the front. That's thrown a big spanner in the works for Fassa.
A lot of sprinters in the Tour this year. You can see the big organisation coming from AG2R, but they're getting swept away. They don't have the firepower of Fassa Bortolo, and there's still a lot of blue and white jerseys of Fassa Bortolo on the front end of the main field. There is a line of pink jerseys too there as well. That's Team Mobile. That is the team of Eric Zabel. Eric Zabel will be looking for the victory, but there's a good organisation coming in for Fassa Bortolo. They're looking for the final kilometre. They're kicking up the pace. This is a routine they put to success in the Giro d'Italia on 9 separate occasions. Eric Zabel there, Phil, is trying to get the jump up to the wheel of Alessandro Patacchi.
He's got it under 1 kilometre to go now. Zabel has got he's the first pink jersey we can see there. Also Stuart O'Grady's trying to burst in onto the scene, and Jimmy Castor is there. Also Thor Hushoff has started to bounce his way up towards the leaders. Wiped away now, the names we've talked about. Lance Armstrong and Ulrich taking a back seat now, because this is a matter for the sprinters. You don't get mixed up with the men of steel who have no nerve, who won't win the Tour de France, but they can win these stages. Zabel is to the right, Danilo Hondo is there, so too is Fabio Baldato. This is going to be one terrific sprint.
Well, coming up through the middle there, you can see Baden Cook as well, the man who won the green jersey points competition last year. The blue jersey of Gerolsteiner is Danilo Hondo. Thor Hushoff has moved up into second position. Everybody is looking for position, and I think Alessandro Patacchi is out of place.
But Thor Hushoff isn't. Hushoff is on the left of our picture here. Kersipou running in the centre of our picture now. This could be a tremendous rule, and Robbie McEwen coming late on the line. I think it's Kersipou, so does he. Boy, McEwen came late, but he could have stolen it on the photo. He won a stage of the Tour of Switzerland when the other guy thought he'd won this year. Robbie kept going. I think I'm going to give it to Kersipou, but that was desperately close, and Hushoff was right there as well, and he will move right up the overall classification, probably to second. Now, there is McEwen on the right. This is Jan Kersipou pushing through the middle. Hushoff is over to the left. The camera needs to show us down below. We're not interested in this because we need to know where those wheels are.
Look at the face of Jan Kersipou. I'm pretty sure he knows with confidence that he was ahead. Let's have a look from the helicopter angle here. Hushoff starting the sprint there on the right-hand side. He's got a great line there, right up against the barriers. That means nobody can overtake him on the inside, only coming round the left-hand side, which is exactly what Jan Kersipou is trying to do. Kersipou admirably set up here by his teammate. A last lunge for the line here coming by Robbie McEwen. McEwen is up alongside the Estonian rider, but as you can see the lunge for the line, it was too desperate. Jan Kersipou gets win number 1. Nice move by him.
Absolutely. How different it looks from the helicopter, because it was a clear victory there for Jan Kersipou of Estonia. Well, a tremendous sprint finish of all the sprinters. Remember, this is the man who Lance Armstrong took the yellow jersey off back in 1999. The only other man to lead the Tour on that occasion. We'll take a break on OLN. Rejoin us quickly. Welcome back. The Tour de France has now arrived in Charleroi. What a royal sprint it was. There's the result for you from Pacific Life. Jan Kersipou taking the victory. Of course, they're all the same time. McEwen not quite getting up. Thor Hushoff profiting from the small bonus in third. Hondo, Jean-Patrick Nazon in fifth. A little bit further down, I think we can see more. Yes, we can. Baden Cook. These are the greatest sprinters. Patacchi will be really upset. Only 8th, and Zabel 9th. Alan Davis of Australia 10th. Okay, let's have a look at our Subaru moment, driven by what's inside. And let's have a look at the sprint. I thought at the moment on the left there that Thor Hushoff had done enough to get the big bonus, and that would have given him a placing right up behind Fabian Cancellara in the race for the yellow jersey. But Jan Kersipou gets his 6th win of the year. He turned pro, by the way, back in 1992, and that speed is still there. He's won now 119 races in his career. And that was our Subaru moment, driven by what's inside. Well, looking down the line, always a sad sight. This has not been a great tour for Australia in 2 days. They lost Matt White yesterday before he could even start with a broken collarbone. Michael Rogers fell off in the prologue time trial. Brad McGee, who won it last year, finished only 4th. And today, Brad McGee in desperate difficulty. And he thanks Matty White, the Australian champion, for coming back and getting him home to the finishing line. There'll be better days for him.
Well, I hope there'll be better days for him, but I think he'll have a serious talk with the management as to whether or not to keep in the Tour de France over the next couple of days.
Jan Kirsipuu,
here is the winner, Jan
congratulations.
Kirsipuu.
An explosive finish.
And I think this is going to be in English because he speaks English, Jan Kirsipuu, so let's eavesdrop for a minute.
For me, because I haven't been sprinting for a long time already. I haven't won sprints since the month of March, and now the last 2 months I was not really good condition, and then I had little hope before the Tour de France to be better, but yesterday I was still so bad. And today suddenly after the half race I started to feel better, and the sprint was wonderful, incredible for me because.
Great day for Estonia also. We all remember you were in yellow.
Well, there's Jan Kirsipuu speaking in very good English, and I have to say, that, by the way, is his 4th ever stage win in the Tour de France, Paul, but he is a strange sprinter. He's never won the big races, though, as I say. That's his 119th win of his career.
He's a very consistent rider over the years, and we've seen him win many, many sprints, but certainly he's a kind of bike rider who I think will have excelled in the tough conditions today. As he himself said there in the interview, it's in the second part of the race that he started to feel that little bit better. When everybody else was beginning to suffer, his body started to get a lot stronger. And it was, in fact, if you look at that sprint, Phil, just a little bit like a slow motion sprint because everybody was tired.
Everybody was tired. It was a long way up that home straight. The big thing about long straight roads to the line, the banner always looks closer than where it really is. And if you misjudge by just a matter of braking 10 feet too soon, you get a result like that. Robin McEwen loses and Jan Kirsipuu wins.
And of course Alessandro Petacchi, his team did the majority of the pacemaking in that first part of the race. After that breakaway got clear after just 12 kilometres of racing, it wasn't the big Alessandro Petacchi blue train in the last 10 kilometres, and I have a feeling that is what Alessandro Petacchi needs to win, just like Mario Cipollini did many years ago. Watch this sprint one more time here though, Phil, because you look at Robbie McEwen there. As you said, if you start the sprint too early, it's possible to come back at the last possible moment. McEwen started to come back, but he just did not have that jump on the man from Estonia, Jan Kirsipuu, who comes right up through the middle in an ideally timed sprint.
And later this month, by the way, during the Tour de France, 17th of July to be precise, Jan Kirsipuu will celebrate his 35th victory. It seems Charleroi and birthdays have something to run in common, doesn't it?
It certainly does. You can see the man in the blue on the right-hand side as well, by the way, is Danilo Hondo, who a couple of years ago was a top sprinter with Team Telecom, which is now he's now left to go across to the Gerolsteiner team. And my old favourite there in the pink jersey, Eric Zabel, didn't quite have the speed there, and I think he came up inside of the top 15, but he won't be too happy with that. But that could all change in the next couple of days.
That was a great lead out too for Thor Hushovd. He couldn't quite make it to the line, but he's worked very hard today to try and get that yellow jersey. He's put himself in with a chance to take it tomorrow, because with his sprinting prowess. McEwen again had to come from the depths of the peloton there. He had to get round a Fassa Bortolo rider, and he's a very fast finisher, Robbie, but by the time he gets round there, he's just left it a little bit too late. There he is, working his whole body there, the former champion of Australia. And don't forget that Robbie McEwen was the very first Australian to win the green points jersey in the Tour de France, and last year, of course, it was Baden Cook. What happened to Mario Cipollini?
I don't think Cipollini was firing on all cylinders. Let's not forget he was dropped today. He had to trace for about 35 kilometres to get himself back into the main field. If the sun comes out and things start to be a little bit better, we might see Mario Cipollini again, but you know, he is getting a bit long in the tooth at 37 years of age. Alessandro Petacchi didn't have the organisation. I think he needed the team to set him up perfectly, but he's got a lot more flat stages to go, and there are a lot of sprinters in this race. Let's not forget the man we did talk about, Baden Cook, the defending champion in the green jersey points race. He was up there in the top 10.
Yeah, we mustn't distract, of course, from the race for the final yellow jersey. Lance Armstrong had a good day today. He probably slipped a little bit off the overall classification. He won't be worried about that at all. But don't forget that there's plenty of days when Lance will strike. Today was a good day for him and for the US Postal Service's very flawed team. There's another look at the big figure there at Tor Hushovd, one of the finest Norwegian cyclists. We're just hanging on a little bit longer to try and give you some podium places, but if we can't, we can't. Live pictures, remember. Let's have a look where we go tomorrow. Paul, you know these roads better than I do.
Well, we're going to stay once again in the Ardennes for the riders tomorrow on the stage from Charleroi to Namur. Again, it is a very long stage, 197 kilometers. That's not far off 124 miles of racing. And the riders leave from Charleroi, where they finish this afternoon, and head out towards Mons. There are a couple of climbs out on the course, but it's not quite as difficult as today's stage was.
The map there brought to us by AMD, and their stage 2 tomorrow, Charleroi to Namur. And this will be a good stage tomorrow. It might be a day for the sprinters, but I don't know. We'll be live at our usual time, 9 a.m. Eastern. Prime time show coming, 8 p.m. Eastern and Pacific. AOL for broadband. Pre-race show, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. It's a busy old team, OLN, this year on the Tour de France, but we're trying to cover every angle for you. And so far, we've only had 2 days. Paul and I feel as though we've been here for a month. There's been so much to report, Paul.
There's been a lot, and there will be an awful lot more. There's been crashes, there have been spills. I still think we're going to have a lot more exciting sprinting to come. And in a few days' time, we're also going to have a very important team time trial.
Yes, and that's when we expect to see Lance Armstrong and the boys ride exceptionally well again. We still are waiting for final confirmation, but Cancellara will keep his overall lead, probably by 2 seconds over Hushovd. And I think Lance Armstrong now will be in third place, 8 seconds behind. Oh, there we are, confirmation of it. 2 seconds for Hushovd, 8 seconds for Lance Armstrong. Lance will not be worried in the least. He slipped 1 place in the Tour de France, and Cancellara, he deserves to still be in yellow. He rode like a champion today.
He certainly did. He tried to set up the sprint for his teammate Alessandro Petacchi at the end of the day, but they were all beaten to the line by this very experienced sprinter. There are not many years when this man doesn't get 10 wins in the season. Jan Kirsipuu of Estonia, the former champion of his country, but I think he will savour this one because he actually has had a very difficult season.
He's won in Chalon, he's won in Strasbourg, he's won in Rouen, and now he has won here in Charleroi in Belgium. 4 stage wins since he started riding the Tour de France back in 1993. He didn't start winning in the Tour de France, by the way, until 1999. And I think this one will put down as his best. As he told us in English, he hasn't been winning since March this year, and for a sprinter, that is not good news. But he's chosen the right day to start winning again.
He certainly has, and in the past we've seen him come into the Tour de France with at least 10 wins under his belt. But this year, you could see this is what the French would call un victoire à l'arraché. He really had to pull something out to get that win there. He was using every last little bit of his twitch fibres to push himself across the line by not very much ahead of Robbie McEwen. But the day still belongs, Phil, to the yellow jersey, 23 years of age, Fabian Cancellara.
2 days in his life in the Tour de France. 2 days he has worn the golden fleece of world cycling, the yellow jersey, the maillot jaune. Fabian Cancellara now, it looks as though it fits him here. People wonder how they get all the publicity put on so quickly. Well, they have a little lady behind with an iron, and it always works. There we are. Hope you've enjoyed our live coverage today of the Tour de France. We'll be back with you. There's still an awful long way to go. We're enjoying this race. It's got a wonderful feel about it. It's got all the best sprinters, all the best long-distance riders. This is going to be a great race. Don't forget to pick up all the latest news on the Tour de France on our website address, www.olntv.com. Another day in Belgium tomorrow, and happy 4th of July to you all as we continue our coverage of the Tour de France. This is Phil Liggett, Paul Sherwen, and everybody concerned with our coverage of this year's event. We wish you all a very good day.